Have you ever imagined meeting someone famous in the most unexpected place? For Jason, this was no imagination. It was reality. The evening shift at Graham's Cafe was usually predictable. Nestled in a quiet corner of town, the cafe had a loyal group of regulars who came in for their coffee and a slice of pie. Jason Walker, a 30-year-old waiter with dreams of opening his own restaurant, found solace in the routine. Tonight, however, the humdrum rhythm of the cafe was about to be shattered. Jason wiped down the counter, his mind wandering to the small food truck he'd been saving up for. The bell above the door chimed softly, pulling him back to reality. He glanced up, expecting to see another familiar face. Instead, he froze. Standing in the doorway was none other than Elon Musk. Jason's jaw nearly dropped. He had seen Elon countless times on TV and social media, always commanding attention with his bold ideas and groundbreaking ventures. But seeing him in person, here, in this tiny cafe, was surreal. Elon walked in casually, wearing a simple jacket and jeans, his confident stride betraying no sign of the billionaire lifestyle he was known for. He scanned the room briefly, then chose a booth near the window. The cafe's regulars, usually engrossed in their conversations, fell silent. Jason could feel the tension in the air as whispers spread across the room. "Is that who I think it is?" one older woman murmured to her companion. "What's he doing here?" a man muttered, his voice tinged with skepticism. Jason swallowed hard, smoothing his apron as he approached Elon's table. He forced a smile, determined to keep his composure. "Good evening. What can I get for you tonight?" Jason asked, his voice steady despite the thudding of his heart. Elon looked up, his piercing gaze briefly meeting Jason's before softening. "Just a coffee, black, and a slice of whatever pie you recommend." "Coming right up," Jason replied, turning toward the counter. As he poured the coffee, Jason could hear the murmurs growing louder. It was clear that not everyone in the cafe was thrilled to see Elon Musk. The room was filled with equal parts awe and suspicion. Carrying the coffee and pie to the table, Jason set them down carefully. "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else." "Thanks," Elon said simply, turning his attention to the window. Jason retreated behind the counter, stealing glances at Elon as he worked. He couldn't help but admire the man's ability to remain calm under scrutiny. But not everyone in the cafe shared Jason's sentiments. Evelyn Turner, a retired journalist with a reputation for speaking her mind, stood up from her seat. Her sharp voice cut through the murmurs. Well, if it isn't the man who's trying to control the future," she said, walking toward Elon's table. Jason's stomach tightened. Evelyn wasn't one to shy away from confrontation, and tonight, it seemed, Elon Musk was her target. "You're the guy behind OpenAI, aren't you?" Evelyn continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "And now you've got this new AI company. What is it, XAI? What's your endgame, Mr. Musk? More power? More money?" The cafe fell silent, all eyes on Elon. He set his coffee down and looked up at Evelyn, his expression calm but guarded. "It's not about power or money," he said evenly. "It's about accountability. AI is a powerful tool, and I believe it should be used responsibly." Evelyn crossed her arms, her skeptical expression unwavering. "Responsible? That's rich coming from someone who's made billions off the backs of others." Jason couldn't stay silent any longer. His chest tightened as he stepped out from behind the counter, his voice steady but firm. "Evelyn, that's enough," Jason said, drawing everyone's attention. "You might not agree with everything he's done, but you can't deny he's trying to make a difference." Evelyn turned to Jason, her eyes narrowing. "And what do you know about it, Jason? You're just a waiter." Jason felt the weight of her words, but stood his ground. "I know that progress comes with criticism, but attacking someone without understanding their intentions? That's not fair." The tension in the room was palpable. Jason glanced at Elon, who was watching him with a faint, unreadable expression. Before anyone could respond, the kitchen door swung open, and Mrs. Graham stepped out. Her stern gaze swept across the cafe, landing on Jason. "Jason," she said, her tone sharp, "can I speak to you in the back?" Jason's heart sank as he followed her into the kitchen, leaving behind a cafe buzzing with whispers. What happens next will leave you speechless. Don't miss it. Watch for Chapter 2, and leave a comment below about what you think Jason should do next. What would you do if standing up for someone cost you everything you worked for? Jason stood in the cramped kitchen, his pulse racing. Mrs. Graham, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair tied in a tight bun, crossed her arms and fixed him with a stern glare. She wasn't one to tolerate disruptions, and Jason knew that. "What on earth was that out there?" she demanded, her voice low but firm. Jason hesitated, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "I couldn't just stand there and let Evelyn attack him like that. It wasn't right." Mrs. Graham sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Jason, you know how important the regulars are to this cafe. Evelyn has been coming here for years, and she's wrong," Jason interjected, his voice rising. "I get that the regulars keep this place running, but that doesn't mean they get to treat people like that. Elon Musk or not, he's still a customer." Mrs. Graham's eyes softened for a moment before her stern demeanor returned. "This isn't about right or wrong, Jason. It's about keeping the peace. And right now, your actions are stirring things up in a way that I can't allow." Jason's stomach dropped as her words sank in. He had seen this coming, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. "You're letting me go, aren't you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Graham hesitated before nodding. "I'm sorry, Jason. I'll pay you through the week, but I think it's best if we part ways." Jason stood frozen, the weight of her decision pressing down on him. This cafe wasn't just a job, it was his lifeline, the place where he'd built relationships and found a sense of purpose. "But," he started, his voice cracking, her expression softened again. "It's not personal, Jason. It's just business." He bit back a retort, knowing it wouldn't make a difference. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the kitchen. When he stepped back into the cafe, the atmosphere felt heavier than before. The regulars avoided his gaze, their earlier curiosity now replaced with discomfort. Jason grabbed his things from behind the counter, his chest tight as he tried to hold his head high. As he passed Elon's table, the billionaire looked up. Their eyes met, and Jason managed a faint smile. "Sorry for the scene," Jason said softly. Elon shook his head, his expression unreadable. "You have nothing to apologize for." Jason gave him a small nod and headed for the door, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. As he stepped outside into the crisp evening air, the reality of his situation hit him like a tidal wave. He was unemployed, and for what? For standing up for a man who probably didn't need defending. The next morning, Jason woke up feeling like a different person. The adrenaline from the previous night had worn off, leaving only the sinking realization that he needed to find a new job, and fast. But as he scrolled through job listings on his laptop, his mind kept drifting back to Elon Musk. Why had he come to the cafe in the first place? What was he thinking when Jason defended him? A knock at the door pulled Jason from his thoughts. He frowned, glancing at the clock. He wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the door, Jason froze in shock. Standing on his doorstep was Elon Musk. "Elon?" Jason blurted, his voice filled with disbelief. Elon gave him a small smile. "Can I come in?" Jason stepped aside, still trying to process what was happening. Elon walked into the modest apartment, his presence filling the small space. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," Elon said, turning to face him, "but I wanted to thank you properly for what you did last night." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You came all the way here to thank me?" Elon chuckled softly. "Not just that. I wanted to offer you something." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "Offer me what?" Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card. "I run several initiatives that focus on community outreach and innovation. We're always looking for people with integrity and a sense of justice. After what I saw last night, I think you'd be a good fit." Jason stared at the card, his mind racing. Was Elon Musk, a man with an empire of companies and ventures, offering him a job? I don't know what to say," Jason stammered. "Say yes," Elon said simply, his tone light but sincere. Jason hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Taking this job would change everything, but was he ready for it? What will Jason do next? Will he take Elon's offer, or stick to the life he knows. The choice he makes could change his life forever. Don't miss. Stay tuned, and let us know in the comments what you think Jason should do. Have you ever faced a choice so monumental it left you questioning everything about yourself? Jason held the business card in his hand, his thumb brushing over the embossed logo. The name Elon Musk stared back at him, impossibly surreal against the backdrop of his tiny apartment. "Are you serious?" Jason asked, his voice a mix of astonishment and skepticism. Elon gave a slight nod, his calm demeanor steadying Jason's chaotic thoughts. "I don't make these kinds of offers lightly, Jason. You stood up for what you believed in, even when it came at a cost. That's the kind of person I want on my team." Jason looked up, his mind racing. His instinct screamed to say yes, but doubts crept in like unwelcome shadows. What could someone like him, an ordinary cafe worker, possibly bring to an organization led by one of the most brilliant minds in the world? I'm just a waiter," Jason muttered, shaking his head. "I don't think I'm qualified for whatever it is you're offering." Elon smiled, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "Everyone starts somewhere. I was once a kid from South Africa dreaming about rockets. You have the heart and the courage. That's more valuable than any degree or title." Jason swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He glanced at the card again, imagining what a future working alongside Elon Musk might look like. "What exactly would I be doing?" he asked cautiously. Elon leaned against the small kitchen counter, crossing his arms. "Initially, it would be an entry-level role at one of our community outreach programs, helping underprivileged students get access to technology and education. It's not glamorous, but it's meaningful work. And from there, who knows?" Jason blinked, his pulse quickening. The idea of helping others while working for someone he admired was tempting, but he hesitated, a pang of self-doubt holding him back. "What if I mess up?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Elon's expression softened. "Everyone messes up, Jason. The question isn't if you'll make mistakes, it's how you'll learn from them. That's how we grow." Jason took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was more than just a job offer. It was a chance to rewrite his future. The next morning, Jason found himself pacing the floor of his apartment, the business card still clutched in his hand. He'd barely slept, his thoughts consumed by the decision before him. He thought about the cafe, the warmth of familiar faces, the steady rhythm of pouring coffee and serving meals. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was his. Leaving it behind felt like stepping into the unknown, and that terrified him. But then he remembered the look on Elon's face the night before, the sincerity in his voice, the belief he'd shown in Jason. How many people ever got an opportunity like this? With a deep breath, Jason picked up his phone and dialed the number on the card. Later that week, Jason stood outside a sleek office building, his palms damp with nerves. The towering structure seemed worlds away from the cozy familiarity of Poppy's cafe. As he stepped through the glass doors, he was greeted by a friendly receptionist who directed him to a conference room. When the door opened, Jason's heart skipped a beat. Elon was there, seated at the head of a polished table. He stood and extended a hand, his smile warm and genuine. "Welcome, Jason," Elon said. "I'm glad you decided to take the leap." Jason shook his hand, a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Elon replied, motioning for Jason to sit. As the meeting began, Jason felt a sense of determination rising within him. This was it, a fresh start, a chance to prove himself. But as he listened to Elon outline the role and the mission of the organization, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Jason has taken the leap, but what challenges await him in his new role? Will he rise to the occasion or find himself in over his head? Don't miss to find out. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you think Jason's future holds. Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge of something extraordinary, yet terrifying? Jason stared at his reflection in the elevator's mirror as it climbed steadily toward the 28th floor. His shirt was freshly pressed, his tie slightly askew despite his best efforts. His heart pounded, a mix of excitement and trepidation flooding his senses. This wasn't just another day. This was his first day working for Elon Musk. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a sleek, modern office space bustling with energy. Glass walls reflected sunlight, illuminating collaborative workstations filled with people from all walks of life. Some were glued to their screens, coding furiously. Others discussed ideas over whiteboards covered in diagrams and equations. Jason stepped out, clutching his messenger bag tightly. A young woman with bright eyes and a welcoming smile approached him. "Jason?" she asked, her voice cheerful. "I'm Priya, part of Elon's team. Welcome aboard." Jason returned her smile, grateful for the friendly reception. "Thank you. It's, a little overwhelming," he admitted, glancing around. Priya chuckled. "It always is on the first day. Don't worry, we'll ease you into it. Let me show you around." As they walked through the office, Priya explained the organization's mission, providing underserved communities with access to technology and education. Jason's role would involve coordinating outreach programs, organizing workshops, and ensuring that resources reached the people who needed them most. As the car descended, Jason couldn't help but smile. He'd taken a risk, stepped into the unknown, and found himself on the path to something extraordinary. Jason's journey has just begun, but challenges and opportunities lie ahead. Can he rise to the occasion and make a difference? Or will the pressures of his new role prove too much? Don't miss as the story unfolds. Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. What would you do if a single opportunity could redefine your life, but you knew it would test your courage at every turn? Jason arrived at the office the next morning, eager to dive into his work. The buzz of activity around him felt invigorating, and he was ready to prove himself. As he settled into his desk, Priya stopped by, her expression a mix of excitement and curiosity. "Elon wants to see you," she said casually, though the glint in her eyes suggested this was no ordinary meeting. Jason's stomach flipped. Did he say what it's about? Priya shrugged. "He rarely does. But if Elon calls you in, it's usually something big." Minutes later, Jason found himself in Elon's office, a spacious yet minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Elon stood by a whiteboard covered in scribbled notes and diagrams. "Jason, good morning," Elon greeted him, motioning for him to sit. "Good morning, Mr. Musk," Jason replied, his voice steady despite the nerves creeping in. "Elon is fine," he corrected, sitting across from him. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Jason nodded, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I've been thinking about the workshop you're organizing this weekend," Elon began. "It's a great start, but I want to take it further. There's a community in New Orleans struggling to rebuild after a series of setbacks. Hurricanes, economic challenges, you name it. They've been overlooked for far too long." Jason listened intently, sensing where this was going. "I want to set up a technology hub there," Elon continued. "A place where people can learn coding, robotics, and other skills to create opportunities for themselves. But it won't be easy. It'll take someone with heart, resilience, and the ability to connect with the community. I think that someone might be you." Jason blinked, stunned. "You want me to lead this?" "Yes," Elon said simply. "You showed courage and conviction that night at the cafe. That's exactly what we need for a project like this. Of course, you'll have the support of the team here, but on the ground, it'll be your show." Jason's mind raced. This was an incredible opportunity, one that aligned perfectly with his values and dreams. But the thought of relocating, leaving behind the life he knew, was daunting. As the car descended, Jason couldn't help but smile. He'd taken a risk, stepped into the unknown, and found himself on the path to something extraordinary. Jason's journey has just begun, but challenges and opportunities lie ahead. Can he rise to the occasion and make a difference? Or will the pressures of his new role prove too much? Don't miss as the story unfolds. Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. What would you do if a single opportunity could redefine your life, but you knew it would test your courage at every turn? Jason arrived at the office the next morning, eager to dive into his work. The buzz of activity around him felt invigorating, and he was ready to prove himself. As he settled into his desk, Priya stopped by, her expression a mix of excitement and curiosity. "Elon wants to see you," she said casually, though the glint in her eyes suggested this was no ordinary meeting. Jason's stomach flipped. Did he say what it's about? Priya shrugged. He rarely does. But if Elon calls you in, it's usually something big. Minutes later, Jason found himself in Elon's office, a spacious yet minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Elon stood by a whiteboard covered in scribbled notes and diagrams. "Jason, good morning," Elon greeted him, motioning for him to sit. "Good morning, Mr. Musk," Jason replied, his voice steady despite the nerves creeping in. "Elon is fine," he corrected, sitting across from him. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Jason nodded, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I've been thinking about the workshop you're organizing this weekend," Elon began. "It's a great start, but I want to take it further. There's a community in New Orleans struggling to rebuild after a series of setbacks. Hurricanes, economic challenges, you name it. They've been overlooked for far too long." Jason listened intently, sensing where this was going. "I want to set up a technology hub there," Elon continued. "A place where people can learn coding, robotics, and other skills to create opportunities for themselves. But it won't be easy. It'll take someone with heart, resilience, and the ability to connect with the community. I think that someone might be you." Jason blinked, stunned. "You want me to lead this?" "Yes," Elon said simply. "You showed courage and conviction that night at the cafe. That's exactly what we need for a project like this. Of course, you'll have the support of the team here, but on the ground, it'll be your show." Jason's mind raced. This was an incredible opportunity, one that aligned perfectly with his values and dreams. But the thought of relocating, leaving behind the life he knew, was daunting. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say yes," Elon said, a small smile playing on his lips. "Or say no, if you feel it's not the right fit. But don't let fear decide for you. Think about the lives you could change, including your own." Jason hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He thought about his late-night shifts at the cafe, the frustration of feeling stuck, and the pride he'd felt standing up for what he believed in. Finally, he met Elon's gaze. "If you think I can do this, then I'm in." Elon's smile widened. "Good. Let's get to work." The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Jason was introduced to the team that would help him plan the project, a group of engineers, educators, and community organizers who shared his enthusiasm. Together, they brainstormed ideas for the tech hub, from designing beginner-friendly courses to creating outreach programs for local schools. By the time Jason left the office that evening, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in years, he was part of something bigger than himself, something that could truly make a difference. As he walked home, Jason couldn't help but reflect on how quickly his life had changed. Just days ago, he'd been a struggling waiter, uncertain about his future. Now, he was on the brink of a new adventure, one filled with challenges but also endless possibilities. He pulled out his phone and called his mom, knowing she'd want to hear the news. "Jason," she exclaimed, her voice warm with pride. "This is incredible. I always knew you were meant for more." "Thanks, Mom," Jason said, smiling. "I just hope I can live up to it." "You will," she assured him. "You've always had a big heart. That's what people need most." That night, Jason lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The doubts crept in, whispering fears of failure and inadequacy. But he pushed them aside, reminding himself why he'd said yes. This wasn't just about him. It was about giving others the chance to rise above their circumstances, just as he was trying to do. Jason has taken the first step toward a bold new chapter, but the road ahead is anything but easy. Will he have what it takes to bring Elon's vision to life, or will the obstacles prove too great? Stay tuned for Chapter 6 and share your thoughts below. What would you do in Jason's shoes? Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more. Have you ever faced a challenge so massive that even taking the first step felt overwhelming? Jason stepped off the plane into the humid air of New Orleans, a single suitcase in tow. He'd arrived in a city alive with music and history, yet marked by scars of past struggles. As he stood in the terminal, waiting for his ride, he reminded himself of Elon's words, "Don't let fear decide for you." His mission was clear: create a tech hub that could transform lives. But how? The driver, a local named Marcus, greeted Jason warmly and helped him load his suitcase into the car. "So, you're the guy Musk sent down here?" Marcus asked, navigating the streets with practiced ease. Jason nodded. "That's me. I'm here to help set up the tech center." Marcus chuckled, a low, deep sound. "Well, you've got your work cut out for you. Folks around here don't trust outsiders much. You'll need to prove you're not just another suit with big ideas and no follow-through." Jason swallowed hard. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but hearing it out loud made the challenge feel even more daunting. The ride ended at a modest building in the heart of the city, surrounded by colorful murals and a few rundown storefronts. This was the future site of the tech hub. As Jason stepped inside, he was greeted by a mix of dust, peeling paint, and the faint smell of mildew. "Well," Marcus said, clapping Jason on the back, "it's got potential." Jason laughed nervously. "Yeah, let's call it that." Over the next few days, Jason dove headfirst into the project. His first task was assembling a local team. Elon had provided a generous budget, but Jason knew money wouldn't solve everything. He needed people who understood the community, who could bridge the gap between the tech world and the everyday struggles of the neighborhood. He started by visiting local schools and community centers, handing out flyers, and talking to anyone who would listen. It wasn't long before he met Vanessa, a fiery middle school teacher who was passionate about giving her students opportunities beyond the limited options they'd grown up with. "You're serious about this?" Vanessa asked skeptically when they met at a cafe. "Completely," Jason said. "But I need help. I don't know this community the way you do." Vanessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'm in. But if you mess this up, you'll have a lot of angry moms to answer to." Jason grinned. "Fair enough." With Vanessa's help, Jason began to recruit a diverse team of locals: an electrician named Luis, who'd been looking for steady work, a retired software engineer named Deborah, eager to share her knowledge, and even a few teenagers who saw the project as a way to escape the cycle of poverty. Each day brought new challenges. The building needed extensive repairs, the curriculum had to be developed from scratch, and skepticism from the community lingered. But slowly, progress began to take shape. One evening, as Jason worked late, he received a call from Elon. "How's it going?" Elon asked, his tone casual but curious. Jason hesitated. "It's a lot harder than I expected. People here don't trust easily, and I don't blame them. But we're making progress." "Good," Elon said. "Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about persistence. The impact you make won't happen overnight." Jason nodded, even though Elon couldn't see him. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." By the end of the week, the tech hub's foundation was beginning to solidify. The team had cleaned and painted the building, installed basic equipment, and even hosted a small open house to introduce the community to the idea. Jason stood by the entrance, watching as kids and parents explored the space. There were still plenty of skeptics, but seeing even a few smiles felt like a victory. Vanessa joined him, crossing her arms as she surveyed the room. "Not bad for your first week, Musk's guy." Jason laughed. "I'll take it." As the evening wound down, Jason couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he believed this crazy idea might actually work. Jason has taken the first steps toward building something extraordinary, but the real test is yet to come. Will the community embrace his vision, or will doubts and obstacles threaten to derail the project? Share your thoughts below. What do you think it takes to win people's trust? Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more updates on this inspiring journey. The hardest battles are the ones fought against invisible enemies: fear, doubt, and the scars of the past. Jason arrived at the tech hub early, the morning light casting long shadows across the freshly painted walls. Despite the progress, an unease gnawed at him. He could sense it in the cautious glances of passers-by, in the whispers that followed him as he moved through the neighborhood. For every supporter like Vanessa, there seemed to be twice as many skeptics. His fears were confirmed during the next community meeting. Held in the gym of the local high school, the gathering was meant to update residents about the project and answer their questions. Jason stood at the front, armed with a presentation and a smile, but the energy in the room felt heavy. The first few questions were polite but probing. "What's the catch?" An older woman asked. "Why should we trust some tech guy who doesn't know anything about us?" A young man added, his arms crossed. Jason did his best to address their concerns. "This isn't about making money or taking anything from this community. It's about creating opportunities, jobs, education, a chance for growth. And I'm not here to impose anything. I'm here to learn and work alongside all of you." The crowd murmured, some nodding in tentative approval, but the tension didn't break. Then a man near the back stood up. "I've heard promises like this before," he said, his voice loud and cutting. "Big talk from outsiders who think they can come here and fix everything. They swoop in, make a mess, and leave us to clean it up. How do we know you're any different?" Jason froze. He had no easy answer to that. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice firm. "Look, I get it. We've all seen our fair share of broken promises. But Jason's not just talking. He's putting in the work. I've been there with him every day, and I wouldn't stand here backing him if I thought this was just another scam." The man didn't respond, but his skepticism lingered in the room like a storm cloud. After the meeting, Jason slumped into a chair at the hub, his mind racing. He had expected resistance, but facing it head-on was exhausting. Vanessa sat down across from him, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. "Rough night, huh?" she said. Jason let out a weary laugh. "That's an understatement. I just don't know how to convince them. What if they're right? What if I fail and make things worse?" Vanessa leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Failure's not the problem. It's what you do after that matters. If you want them to trust you, you've got to keep showing up, even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard." Jason nodded, her words giving him a glimmer of strength. Determined to push forward, Jason threw himself into the work. He organized free workshops, inviting anyone interested to learn basic coding and computer skills. To his surprise, a small but diverse group showed up. Teenagers looking for something new, parents hoping to expand their job prospects, and even a few retirees curious about the digital age. Jason worked side by side with them, teaching, listening, and learning. He shared stories of his own struggles, how he had doubted himself even as he accepted Elon Musk's offer. Slowly, the walls of mistrust began to crack. One afternoon, as the workshop wound down, a teenage boy named Malik approached Jason. "You're serious about this, huh?" Malik said, fiddling with the strap of his backpack. "I am," Jason replied. "Why do you ask?" Malik hesitated, then shrugged. "Just most people around here don't care. They see us as a lost cause. But this feels different." Jason smiled. "That's because it is. And people like you are going to make it even better." Despite these small victories, the road remained rocky. A local business owner refused to donate supplies, muttering about outsiders with big ideas. A vandal spray-painted "Go home" on the hub's front door, a harsh reminder that not everyone welcomed the change. Each setback felt like a punch to the gut, but Jason refused to give up. He thought of the faces of the people who had started to believe in the project, Vanessa, Malik, and the others, and let their hope fuel his resolve. One evening, Jason received a call from Elon. "How's it going down there?" Elon asked. Jason hesitated before answering. "It's tough. Some people are on board, but there's still a lot of pushback. I'm not sure if I'm making a difference or just stirring things up." Elon's voice was calm but firm. "Progress always stirs things up. If everyone agreed with you, you wouldn't be doing anything meaningful. Keep going, Jason. The impact will come." As he hung up, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. He looked around the hub, now alive with potential, and made a silent promise to himself. "I won't stop until this place becomes what it was meant to be." Jason is gaining ground, but the fight for trust and acceptance is far from over. What would you do in his shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of this inspiring journey. Sometimes, the loudest critics mask their own quiet dreams, waiting for a reason to believe again. The incident with the spray-painted door shook Jason, but he refused to let it derail him. Early the next morning, he scrubbed the graffiti off himself, determined to restore the hub's welcoming appearance. As he worked, Vanessa arrived with 2 steaming cups of coffee and a determined look in her eyes. "Figured you'd need this," she said, handing him one. Jason smiled, his hands still wet from the soapy water. "You know me too well." "You're doing good, Jason," Vanessa said, her voice soft but resolute. "And the more good you do, the harder they'll push back. That's just how it works." Jason nodded, appreciating her steady presence. Later that day, Jason decided to try another approach to win the community's trust. He reached out to some of the most vocal skeptics, inviting them to tour the hub and share their concerns directly. Among them was Mr. Carter, the same man who had criticized Jason so harshly at the community meeting. When Mr. Carter arrived, his arms were crossed, and his face was set in a skeptical frown. Jason greeted him warmly and gave him a thorough tour, showing him the classrooms, the computer lab, and the small library stocked with donated books. "This is all great," Mr. Carter said, his tone gruff. "But how does any of this really help us? What's stopping you from packing up and leaving once the cameras stop rolling?" Jason paused, choosing his words carefully. "I get where you're coming from. I know this place has been let down before. But I'm not here for the cameras or the credit. I'm here because I believe in what this community can achieve. And I won't leave until we've built something that lasts." Mr. Carter studied Jason for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed. "All right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now, but don't think I won't call you out if I see anything shady." Jason smiled, extending his hand. "Fair enough. Hold me accountable. That's how we get better." To Jason's surprise, Mr. Carter became an unlikely ally. A retired teacher with deep roots in the neighborhood, he started volunteering at the hub, helping young students with math and science. His involvement lent Jason's project newfound credibility among the older residents, and slowly, more people began to warm up to the idea of the hub. Meanwhile, Jason continued to focus on the younger generation, organizing workshops that blended practical skills with inspiration. One day, during a coding session, Malik approached him with a hesitant smile. "Hey, Mr. Jason," Malik said, holding up his tablet. I made this app. It's nothing big, but I thought you might want to see it." Jason took the tablet, his eyes lighting up as he explored Malik's creation. It was a simple but clever app that helped users track their daily goals. "This is amazing, Malik," Jason said, genuinely impressed. "You've got real talent. Have you thought about expanding on this?" Malik shrugged, a shy grin spreading across his face. "I didn't think it was that good." "It's not just good. It's the start of something great," Jason replied. "Keep working on it. And if you ever need help, I'm here." The hub began to flourish, becoming a place where people of all ages came to learn, connect, and dream. The atmosphere shifted, and the once skeptical whispers in the neighborhood were replaced with cautious optimism. Still, not everyone was on board. The hub's growing success drew the attention of a local politician, Councilwoman Lane, who publicly questioned the project's funding and motives. In a televised interview, she stated, "While this initiative seems noble on the surface, we need to ask tough questions. Who's really benefiting from this? And why wasn't the community consulted before it began?" Jason watched the interview with a sinking feeling. Though he had expected criticism, hearing it on such a public platform was disheartening. Vanessa, however, saw it differently. "This is a good thing," she said, gesturing to the screen. "How is this good?" Jason asked, incredulous. "Because it means they're paying attention," Vanessa replied. "The more noise they make, the more people will want to see for themselves. And when they do, they'll see the truth." Jason nodded, her optimism infectious. To counter the negativity, Jason invited Councilwoman Lane to visit the hub. He gave her the same tour he had given Mr. Carter, emphasizing the positive impact the project was already having on the community. Though Lane remained reserved, she agreed to meet with some of the participants. By the end of her visit, she seemed less skeptical, though she stopped short of offering her full support. "We'll see how this plays out," she said before leaving. Despite the challenges, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. The hub was growing, and so was the belief that change was possible. The tide is beginning to turn, but obstacles remain. Will Jason's vision for the hub withstand the scrutiny and opposition? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next chapter of this inspiring story. In the darkest moments, when the world seems stacked against you, the smallest glimmer of hope is often enough to push forward. The first few months at the hub had been a whirlwind of successes and setbacks, but Jason had remained steadfast, believing in the project and the people it was meant to serve. The building was filled with the hum of productivity, laughter, and the occasional frustration from the students as they worked through coding problems or math equations. Every day felt like a victory, but Jason knew the real test was coming. A month after Councilwoman Lane's visit, the local news picked up on the hub's growing presence. Headlines started popping up about its success, and with the attention came questions about the hub's sustainability. Jason's phone rang off the hook with interview requests, inquiries from local businesses, and demands from other community leaders wanting their own piece of the action. Through it all, he had one goal in mind: make sure that the hub's mission stayed the same, no matter how much the media or local politicians tried to spin it. He'd made a promise to the community, and he wasn't about to break it. It was a bright Tuesday morning when Jason got a call from his lawyer. The words that followed shook him to his core. "There's been a formal complaint filed. Allegations of financial misconduct," his lawyer explained, his voice tight. "A few people from the city council have banded together, and they're calling for an investigation into your funding sources. They're demanding transparency." Jason's mind raced as he processed the news. He had worked tirelessly to make sure every dollar was accounted for, every resource properly allocated. But now, it seemed like the rug was being pulled out from under him. "I'm not doing anything illegal," Jason said, his voice sharp. "This is a smear campaign, isn't it?" "It's not clear yet," the lawyer replied. "But you need to prepare. This could get ugly." The accusations came quickly, swirling like a storm cloud around the hub. Some of the local press outlets began running stories questioning Jason's connections with certain donors, speculating about the true intentions behind the project. It wasn't just about the hub anymore. It was about his character, his motives. At the next community meeting, things took a sharp turn. The room was packed, a mixture of community members, journalists, and council representatives. Jason had planned to give an update on the hub's progress, but instead, he found himself defending his integrity. "Jason, we've been hearing rumors that you're using the hub as a front for personal gain," Mr. Carter said, his voice laced with doubt. "Are these accusations true?" Jason's heart sank, but he refused to let the question intimidate him. "No, Mr. Carter, they're not true. Everything I've done has been for the community. I've opened the books, and I'm happy to show anyone exactly where every dollar goes. But I'm not going to sit here and let people try to tear down what we've built. Not without a fight." The room fell silent, and for a brief moment, Jason thought he could hear the weight of every critical word hanging in the air. He could feel the eyes on him, waiting for him to falter, to back down. But he stood his ground. Later that evening, Jason met with Vanessa to discuss what was happening. They sat across from each other at a table in the hub's small kitchen, the soft hum of computers in the background as the students finished up their work. "I don't know how much longer I can do this, Vanessa," Jason said, rubbing his forehead. "Everything's falling apart. The community's starting to turn on me. The press is all over the allegations. It's like no one cares about what we're trying to do here." Vanessa reached across the table, placing a hand on his. "You're not in this alone. We all believe in you, Jason. We believe in what the hub stands for. And we know you're not in this for the wrong reasons." Jason looked up at her, searching her face for any sign of doubt, but there was none. "But what if they're right?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa shook her head. "I know you, Jason, and I know what you've done for this community. No matter what anyone says, we've got the truth on our side. And that's something they can't take away from us." The next morning, Jason made a decision. He would address the accusations head-on. He gathered the staff and a few key community members for a meeting, determined to clear the air once and for all. With the media present, he took the podium, looking out over the crowd. The room was filled with reporters, some with skeptical eyes, others with cameras ready to capture every moment. "I've heard the rumors. I know the allegations against me are serious," Jason began, his voice steady despite the pressure. "But I'm here to tell you that they're false. I've opened every account, every file, every ledger, and I invite anyone who has questions to look at them. I'm not hiding anything. This hub was built with the community in mind. Nothing more, nothing less. He paused, taking a deep breath. I understand that skepticism is part of the process, and I'm not asking for blind faith, but I'm asking for a fair chance. This hub, this project, is about giving people opportunities, about creating a space for growth and change. It's not about me. It's about us. The tension in the room was palpable as Jason finished his speech, waiting for the backlash. But to his surprise, something different happened. Councilwoman Lane, who had been standing in the back, stepped forward, her expression unreadable. I've been watching closely, she said, her voice calm but firm. And I have to admit, you've done more than I thought you would. This community has seen its fair share of broken promises, and I can understand why people are skeptical. But after what I've seen here today, I'm willing to give you a chance. This time, you've got my support. Jason blinked, unable to fully process what he had just heard. For the first time in weeks, a weight seemed to lift off his shoulders. The fight wasn't over, but this was a major victory. The battle for the hub isn't over, but Jason has proven he's willing to fight for what he believes in. Will the community rally behind him? Or will the forces working against him grow even stronger? Stay tuned. This journey is far from finished. What do you think will happen next? Do you think Jason will be able to maintain his integrity and win over the skeptics? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this incredible story. What if everything you thought you knew was wrong? What if the true story wasn't the one you'd been told? The days following Councilwoman Lane's unexpected show of support were a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Jason knew the battle wasn't won, not by a long shot, but the tension had eased, and with it, a flicker of hope sparked within him. Still, that nagging voice in the back of his mind wouldn't let him fully relax. The accusations were still out there, and they wouldn't simply disappear because a single politician had come to his defense. Back at the hub, things seemed to settle into a routine. The students were back to work, the staff had rallied around Jason, and even some of the regulars from the community came in to offer their support. It felt like things were slowly returning to normal. But Jason couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something deeper going on. Something underneath the surface that no one was talking about. It was late one evening when Jason received a call from Vanessa that caught him off guard. I think I found something, Vanessa said, her voice unusually tense. Something that might be bigger than we realize. Jason's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I've been looking into the council members behind the accusations. It doesn't add up, Jason, she explained. There's more going on here than just a few disgruntled individuals. Someone's pulling strings, and I think it's connected to a much larger game. Jason leaned forward, his interest piqued. What are you talking about? Vanessa hesitated. I started digging into their financials, their connections, and I found some things that are troubling. Some of these people have been involved with certain businesses and organizations that stand to lose if the hub succeeds. I think they're trying to sabotage you, Jason. It's not just about the hub anymore. It's about something much bigger. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. So, what now? I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm going to keep digging, Vanessa replied. You need to be careful. These people don't play fair. The next day, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He stepped into the hub, scanning the room as he always did, but something felt off. There were a few new faces among the regulars, people he didn't recognize. The atmosphere felt tense. As he made his way to the back office, he overheard snippets of conversation from the staff. Whispers, unsure murmurs about things that didn't make sense. And then, it hit him. Someone had been leaking information about the hub. His every move was being tracked. He clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. Who could it be? And why now? That afternoon, Jason met with Councilwoman Lane to discuss the next steps for the hub. She had requested a private meeting, and he couldn't help but wonder if it was more than just a courtesy visit. As he entered the small conference room, Lane was already sitting at the table, her fingers tapping nervously against the wood. Jason, she began, her voice low. I'm glad to see you're hanging in there, but I'm afraid things are about to get more complicated. Jason took a seat, his senses on high alert. What do you mean? Lane's eyes shifted uneasily. I've been hearing rumors from some of the people behind the scenes. There's talk of a major push to shut down the hub, officially. Not just through politics, but financially. Some of the funding you've been receiving is under scrutiny, and I'm afraid it's going to get worse before it gets better. Jason's heart dropped. Are you telling me they found a way to attack the hub's funding? Lane nodded. I'm not sure who's behind it yet, but I'm starting to believe there's a bigger play here. And you're right in the middle of it. Jason spent the next few days diving deeper into his own research, trying to make sense of the puzzle pieces Vanessa had uncovered. It was clear now that the people attacking the hub weren't just concerned with its success, they were actively working against it, for reasons that went far beyond simple political rivalry. He started reaching out to some of the donors who had supported the hub early on, trying to gather information. He needed to understand the full extent of the connections at play. That evening, after one such call, Jason returned to the hub to find Vanessa waiting for him in his office, her face grave. I think I know who's behind it, she said, her voice tense. I dug deeper into the council members, and one name keeps coming up, Victor Baines. Jason's brow furrowed. Who's Victor Baines? He's a big player in the city's real estate development scene, Vanessa explained. He's been eyeing this area for years, and with the hub thriving, it's become a prime target for redevelopment. He stands to make millions if this project is shut down. Jason's stomach churned as the pieces clicked together. So, this whole thing wasn't about me or the hub at all. It's about money. About land. Vanessa nodded. I'm afraid so. And Baines isn't someone who takes no for an answer. The next few days were a blur of meetings, research, and tense phone calls. Jason knew the fight was far from over, and the stakes had just been raised. It wasn't just about protecting the hub anymore. It was about standing up to a system that valued profit over people, and that was a fight Jason wasn't willing to lose. But with every step forward, it felt like they were being pulled deeper into a web of corruption and greed. The people behind this were powerful, and they wouldn't stop until they had everything they wanted. The true battle is only just beginning. Jason is about to face the harsh reality of fighting against forces far beyond his control. Can he expose the corruption, or will he be consumed by it? Keep watching to find out. This story is far from over. Do you think Jason can uncover the truth behind the attacks on the hub? Or is the power of the real estate moguls too great to overcome? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for the next chapter in this gripping tale. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered? Sometimes, the truth is more dangerous than the lie. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that the world around him was changing faster than he could keep up. Every step forward seemed to trigger 2 steps back. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The deeper he dug, the darker the world he was stepping into became. The attack on the hub was no longer just a political maneuver. It was part of a larger, far-reaching conspiracy. And at the heart of it was Victor Baines, the real estate mogul whose ambitions were as vast as his power. Jason couldn't just sit back and let this man have his way. It wasn't just about saving the hub anymore. It was about exposing a system that was broken beyond repair and taking a stand against the forces that sought to tear it all down. The night after his meeting with Vanessa, Jason found himself unable to sleep. His mind was racing with everything he had learned in the last few days. Baines was a dangerous man, wealthy, connected, and ruthless. But it wasn't just his business dealings Jason had to worry about. Baines had deep ties to local politicians, law enforcement, and even city officials who could easily manipulate things from the shadows. Jason knew that to bring Baines down, he'd need more than just information. He'd need a plan, something airtight that would expose the truth for everyone to see. The next morning, Jason met with Councilwoman Lane at her office. She had offered to help him navigate the political landscape, but Jason was beginning to wonder how much she could really do. The power behind Baines was vast, and Lane wasn't sure who could be trusted anymore. We need to hit him where it hurts, Jason said, sitting across from Lane. This isn't just about the hub anymore. It's about uncovering the web of corruption he's built. I'm willing to risk everything to bring it to light. Lane looked concerned. I get it, Jason, but this isn't something we can do alone. Baines is too powerful. We need allies, people who are willing to go against him. And right now, I don't know who we can trust. Jason leaned forward, his gaze hardening. We can't afford to wait. If we don't act soon, Baines will have this city in his grip, and everything we've worked for will be destroyed. After the meeting, Jason spent the rest of the day meeting with trusted allies from the hub, people who had stood by him through the storm and were ready to fight for its survival. He knew that the road ahead would be dangerous, but he also knew there was no turning back. The truth had to come out. By the end of the week, Vanessa came to him with new information. "I've been digging into Baines's business connections, Jason," she said, her voice low and serious. "I found something that might just be the break we need. Baines has been involved in several illegal land acquisitions, all under the guise of redevelopment. But I think I've traced one of his deals back to a shell corporation. If we can prove the link between that and his attempts to shut down the hub, we might have the evidence we need to take him down." Jason's eyes widened. "What do you mean by shell corporation?" Vanessa handed him a thick file, her finger pointing to several pages. "Baines has been funneling money through a network of fake companies, using them to buy up land at inflated prices and then using that land for personal gain. If we can expose this network, we'll have everything we need." Jason knew that they were close, but he also knew that their time was running out. Baines wasn't going to sit idly by while they uncovered his secrets. Jason had learned the hard way that when you challenge someone like Baines, the stakes weren't just high, they were life-altering. Late that night, as Jason sat in his office reviewing the files, he heard a soft knock at the door. Vanessa walked in, looking anxious. "Jason, there's something else you need to know," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been getting strange calls. Anonymous ones. Someone's trying to intimidate me into backing off. But I'm not going to stop. We're so close." Jason's heart pounded. "What are they saying?" Vanessa swallowed. "They know what we're doing. They warn me that if I keep going, I won't be safe." Jason stood up, pacing across the room. "We're not going to stop. Not now. We've come too far." But even as he spoke those words, a sense of dread washed over him. The fight was escalating. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous things would become. He wasn't sure how much longer they could stay ahead of Baines and his allies. The next morning, Jason made a decision. They needed to confront Baines head-on. "I'm going to set up a meeting with him," Jason said to Vanessa, his voice firm. "We'll get him to admit everything in front of us. He won't be able to hide anymore." Vanessa looked at him with concern. "Are you sure? This man is dangerous. He'll do whatever it takes to protect himself." "I don't care," Jason replied. "We have to do this." The following afternoon, Jason arranged the meeting at a small, discreet location. Baines agreed to meet, but Jason knew better than to trust the man's smooth talk. He was walking straight into the lion's den. As he arrived at the meeting place, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Vanessa had warned him that they were stepping into unknown territory, and she was right. They had no idea what Baines was truly capable of. But it was too late to back out now. The door creaked open, and Jason stepped inside. Baines was already there, sitting behind a large desk, his cold eyes fixed on Jason as he entered. "Well, well," Baines said, his smile more of a smirk. "So, we're finally face to face." Jason didn't flinch. "I know what you're doing, Baines, and I know who you've been working with. This ends now." Baines leaned back in his chair, folding his hands in front of him. "You think you can stop me? You're nothing, Jason. Just a blip in the grand scheme of things." Jason's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but I'll make sure your secrets come to light. You won't get away with this." Baines's smile faltered, and for the first time, Jason saw the mask slip. The man was rattled. The truth is out there, but will Jason be able to expose it before Baines crushes him? What happens next will leave you questioning everything. Don't miss out. Subscribe, leave a comment, and watch the next chapter to find out how this thrilling story unfolds. Do you think Jason can take down Baines and his network? Or will the powerful mogul find a way to silence him once and for all? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What if the line between right and wrong isn't as clear as we think? Sometimes, in the fight for justice, you must be willing to cross that line to make a difference. Jason stared across the table at Victor Baines, who was sitting with an air of superiority, like he had all the time in the world. But Jason knew this conversation wouldn't end like the others. This was no negotiation. This was a war, and he was ready to fight. "You don't understand, Jason," Baines said, his voice calm but laced with threat. You think you can bring me down with a couple of documents and some half-baked accusations? I've built an empire, and nothing you do can touch me. Jason clenched his fists beneath the table, his mind racing. Baines was underestimating him, and that would be his mistake. He wasn't just going to walk away from this empty-handed. Jason had the truth, and the truth was a powerful weapon. We're not playing by your rules anymore, Baines, Jason said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. You think you've got everything under control, but I've got something you can't buy, the truth. Baines's smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of fear creeping into his otherwise composed demeanor. Truth, he scoffed. You think anyone will believe you over me? I have every politician, every official in my pocket. Your truth will be buried the moment you try to speak it. Jason didn't back down. I'm not alone. I've got people, and I've got evidence. If you think you can silence me, you're wrong. The public will know who you really are. They'll know about the land deals, the corruption, the lies. For a moment, Baines said nothing. He studied Jason, his eyes narrowing. You don't realize what you're messing with, he said finally, his voice colder than before. This isn't just about money or power. This is about survival. You think I'll let a nobody like you ruin everything I've worked for? As Jason left the meeting, he couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. He had come in ready to fight, but now he wasn't so sure. Baines's words had shaken him. The man was right about one thing. This wasn't just a fight for the hub or the city anymore. This was a fight for everything. His phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. He glanced down to see a message from Vanessa. We've got a problem. Someone's been digging into our files. I think Baines knows we've been following him. Jason's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected Baines to react so quickly. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. They had to move faster. He couldn't afford to wait for the next strike. Back at his apartment, Jason sat with his laptop open, staring at the encrypted file that Vanessa had sent him earlier. It was filled with documents, financial transactions, land deals, and links between Baines and a series of shell companies. This was the evidence they needed. But now the question was, who could they trust with it? Jason knew they couldn't just go to the press or the authorities. Too many of Baines's people had their hands in those pockets. They needed a safe way to get the truth out without falling into Baines's trap. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Jason tensed, unsure of who it could be. He opened the door to find Vanessa standing there, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. We need to go, she said urgently. Now. Jason raised an eyebrow. What's going on? Vanessa stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. Someone just tried to break into my place. I'm not sure how they knew, but they were looking for the files. Baines's men are closing in. Jason's heart raced. This was it. They had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. We can't stay here, he said, grabbing his things. Let's get to the safe house. We'll figure out our next move there. The drive to the safe house was silent, the tension between them thick. Jason's mind kept replaying his confrontation with Baines, wondering if he had made the right decision. But as the streets blurred past him, he couldn't afford to second-guess himself now. When they arrived, Jason led Vanessa inside and locked the door behind them. The safe house was a small, nondescript house on the outskirts of the city. An old friend of Jason's had offered it as a place to lay low. Okay, we need to get this evidence out, Jason said, opening his laptop. We've got one shot at this. I'm going to send it to a trusted journalist, someone who isn't on Baines's payroll. Vanessa nodded, though the unease in her eyes didn't disappear. What if they find us first? What if they're already watching? We've come this far. We can't back down now, Jason said firmly. This is bigger than us. We can't let Baines win. Later that night, Jason sent the files to a journalist named Erica White, who had a reputation for taking down corrupt politicians and businessmen. She was the one person Jason trusted with the truth. After the email went through, he felt a wave of relief, until his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number he didn't recognize. Jason, came the voice on the other end, low and urgent. You need to get out of there. They're coming for you. Before Jason could respond, the call ended. His heart raced. Vanessa, we've got to move. Now. They barely had time to grab their things before they heard the sound of footsteps outside the house. Jason's pulse quickened. They had been found. Jason and Vanessa ran out the back door, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had no idea how Baines's men had tracked them down, but one thing was certain: they couldn't stay there. As they ran through the woods behind the house, Jason could hear the shouts of the men searching for them. He glanced over at Vanessa, who was breathing heavily, but there was no turning back. They couldn't stop until they had the evidence in the hands of the right people. What do you think Jason and Vanessa's next move will be? Can they outrun Baines and his men? Or will they be caught before they can expose the truth? The stakes are higher than ever, and everything Jason has worked for is on the line. Don't miss the next chapter of this thrilling journey. Subscribe now, leave a comment, and stay tuned. Do you think Jason can trust the journalist he sent the files to? Or is there another twist in store for them? Let us know your thoughts below. Ever wonder how far someone will go to protect their own skin? When you're in a fight for your life, you quickly learn who your true allies are and who's just waiting for the right moment to betray you. Jason and Vanessa had barely gotten 10 miles from the safe house when their car skidded to a halt. The street ahead was blocked by two black SUVs, their engines roaring ominously. Jason's heart raced as he gripped the steering wheel, his mind spinning. "We've been made," Vanessa whispered, her voice trembling. Jason didn't answer. He wasn't about to give up now, not when they were so close to exposing Baines. He floored the accelerator, swerving the car toward a narrow side street. But it was too late. The SUVs moved in like a trap closing around them. "Get out," Jason shouted, slamming the car into park. He grabbed Vanessa's arm, pulling her from the passenger seat as the sound of tires screeching behind them grew louder. They ran down the alley, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Jason could hear the sound of boots pounding against the pavement, chasing them. He pulled Vanessa into a narrow doorway, trying to catch his breath. He had to think fast. "We need to split up," Jason said, his voice steady despite the panic swirling inside him. "I'll lead them away. You head for the park. I'll meet you there." Vanessa shook her head. "I'm not leaving you. They'll catch you. They'll catch us both if we don't do this," Jason snapped, his eyes flashing with urgency. "Trust me. I'll be fine. Just get to the park. We'll figure out what to do next." Vanessa hesitated, but then nodded. "Be careful, Jason." Jason didn't wait for another second. He darted out of the alley and into the street, running as fast as his legs would carry him. Behind him, the sound of pursuit followed. Vanessa reached the park minutes later, her legs burning from the sprint. She ducked behind a large oak tree, her heart pounding in her chest. She pulled out her phone to text Jason, but before she could even type a word, her screen lit up with an incoming message from an unfamiliar number. "You need to stop this. Jason's already made his move." Vanessa's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the message, trying to process what it meant. Who was this? How did they know what was going on? Panic surged through her, but she fought to stay calm. She couldn't afford to fall apart now. Back at the alley, Jason was on the move again, weaving through side streets, trying to stay out of sight. He could hear the voices of his pursuers growing closer. They were relentless, but so was he. He wasn't going to let Baines win. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. He had more important things to focus on. He didn't see the figure lurking in the shadows until it was too late. The sharp prick of a needle in his neck was all it took. Jason's vision blurred as the world tilted around him. He tried to steady himself, but his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground. Before everything went black, one thought lingered in his mind: Vanessa. When Jason woke up, he was in an unfamiliar place. His hands were tied to a chair, and the room around him was dimly lit, cold, and sterile. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air, and he could hear the soft hum of a distant machine. He jerked his arms, trying to break free, but the ropes were tight. His head throbbed from the drugs, but the fog was slowly lifting. He could feel someone's presence in the room, watching him. "Vanessa," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Relax," a voice said from the shadows. "She's fine for now." Jason's breath caught as a figure stepped into the light. It was one of Baines's men, but there was something familiar about him. Jason's heart skipped a beat when he realized who it was. Marcus. Jason's voice was incredulous. Marcus, the man who had been with him from the very beginning, the one who had helped him gather intel, the one he had trusted more than anyone, stood there with a smirk on his face. He was the last person Jason expected to see in a place like this, and the betrayal hit him harder than any blow. Surprised? Marcus asked, his tone laced with smug satisfaction. I always did say I could make a lot more money working for Baines than with you. Jason's mind raced, struggling to process the betrayal. You were working with Baines the whole time? Marcus laughed darkly. Oh, please. I'm not stupid. I saw where this was going, Jason. You were going to take down Baines, expose everything. Well, newsflash, that's not happening. Not on my watch. Jason's blood boiled as he glared at Marcus. So you've been playing both sides this entire time? Exactly, Marcus said, stepping closer. I gave you just enough information to get your hopes up, just enough to get you tangled in this mess. And now, I'm cashing in. Baines is a powerful man, and you're just a pawn in his game. Jason felt his stomach churn. The man he had once trusted had sold him out, and now he was paying the price. But he wouldn't go down without a fight. He had too much at stake. Why help him? Jason asked, his voice low and dangerous. What's in it for you? Marcus chuckled. What's in it for me? Power. Money. Everything I could ever want. And you? You were just a tool. Now, I'm done with you. Jason's eyes narrowed. He could feel the anger building inside him, but he knew he had to keep his cool. He had to get out of this, and he couldn't do it alone. Vanessa, meanwhile, was still in the park, pacing anxiously. The message she'd received was still eating at her, and her mind kept returning to it. Jason's already made his move. What did that mean? Had he done something to get them both out of danger? Or was he already in trouble? Her phone buzzed again, and she froze. The message was from Jason. Get out of there. Baines has someone on the inside. Marcus betrayed me. He's coming for you next. Her heart stopped. Marcus. Vanessa knew she had to move, and she had to do it fast. She grabbed her things and began to run. But this time, she wasn't just running from Baines's men. She was running from someone she thought she could trust. Someone who had been with them from the beginning. Do you think Marcus is really the mastermind behind all this? Or is there someone else pulling the strings? What will Vanessa do next? Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. What do you think Vanessa's next move will be? Can she trust anyone in this fight? Let us know below. Betrayal is never easy to accept, especially when it comes from someone you thought you could trust. But it's in those moments of darkness that you find out just how far you're willing to go to survive. Vanessa's mind raced as she sprinted through the park, her feet pounding against the pavement. Every step felt heavier, the weight of Marcus's betrayal weighing her down. She couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even the people who had been by her side through everything. She had to move fast, but her heart was still racing from the message Jason had sent. Marcus betrayed him. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Marcus, the man who had helped them all along, the one who had always been a step ahead, had been working with Baines from the start. And now, Jason was in danger, captured, possibly tortured, and who knew what else. Vanessa's mind flashed to the plan they had made just hours ago. It had all seemed so simple then. Expose Baines, take down his empire, and finally get out. But now, with Marcus's betrayal hanging over her, everything felt uncertain. She had to find Jason. But how? If Marcus was really working with Baines, that meant he could have eyes everywhere. And every moment she spent in the open made her an easy target. Vanessa ducked into an alley and pulled out her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed a quick message to Jason. Where are you? We need to meet now. She hit send, but as she waited for a reply, she realized something crucial. She couldn't just run into Baines's lair and expect to find him. She had to come up with a plan. She needed allies. Jason's eyes snapped open again. The drugs had worn off, but the disorientation lingered. He was still tied to the chair, his arms aching from the tight ropes cutting into his skin. The cold of the room had seeped into his bones, but his mind was alive with one thought. I have to escape. The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped inside, his expression unreadable. Jason's gaze locked onto him, a mix of disbelief and rage bubbling up inside him. He had always known that Marcus had his own agenda, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Well, Jason, Marcus said, his voice laced with sarcasm. I never thought I'd see you in this position. You always were so sure of yourself. Jason tugged at the ropes, his eyes narrowing. I don't care what you think. You're not going to get away with this. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, I already have. Baines has big plans for you, you know? You're going to help us finish what you started, whether you want to or not. Jason clenched his jaw, trying to stay calm. He needed a way out. He wasn't going to let Marcus win. He'd come too far, sacrificed too much, to let a traitor like him derail everything. Baines is a fool if he thinks I'll help him, Jason spat. I'm not doing a damn thing for him. Marcus chuckled darkly. You don't have a choice, Jason. You never did. Jason's mind was working overtime, trying to formulate a plan. He couldn't overpower Marcus, not in his current state. But maybe he didn't have to. Maybe he could use Marcus's arrogance against him. You really think Baines is going to keep his word? Jason said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. You really think he's going to let you walk away when this is all over? You're expendable, Marcus. Just like the rest of us. For a brief moment, Jason saw a flicker of doubt in Marcus's eyes. He had his attention now. Jason pressed on, knowing he had to plant the seed of doubt. Baines will use you until he doesn't need you anymore. And when that time comes, trust me, you'll be the first one thrown under the bus. I don't care how long you've been working for him. Marcus stepped closer, his face now inches from Jason's. You think I'm afraid of that? He snarled. I've got more power now than you ever will. Baines doesn't throw away his assets. Jason stared him down. We'll see about that. Before Marcus could respond, Jason's phone buzzed from his pocket. It was a text from Vanessa. Where are you? We need to meet now. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know how she had found him, but he wasn't about to waste a second. He had to get out, and fast. Vanessa was still in the park when her phone buzzed again. She quickly read the message from Jason, and for the first time in hours, a glimmer of hope flickered inside her. He was alive. He was still fighting, but she couldn't wait around any longer. Marcus had shown his hand, and now she knew what she was up against. She had to move, and she had to be smart. Vanessa took a deep breath, calming herself before making the call. She needed backup. She needed someone who could help her get Jason out of Baines's grasp. She knew just the person. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, Jason was trying to work his way out of the ropes, his mind focused entirely on the plan to escape. But the sound of the door opening again snapped his attention to the room. This time, it wasn't Marcus. The man who walked in was someone far more dangerous. Baines himself. Jason's pulse quickened. This was it. The man who had orchestrated everything, the one who had brought them all together for his own twisted game, stood in front of him, a calculating look in his eyes. I see you're still alive, Baines said with a smirk, walking closer. I was beginning to wonder if you'd let Marcus finish you off. Jason refused to show any fear. You don't scare me, Baines. You're nothing but a coward hiding behind others. Baines's smirk faded, replaced by a cold, hard stare. You're in no position to make threats, Jason. You're mine now. And if you think your little friend Vanessa can save you, think again. Jason didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew that if there was any chance of escaping, it had to happen now. As Baines turned his back, Jason made his move. Vanessa was just about to leave the park when she received a call from her contact. We're ready, the voice on the other end said. Just say the word, and we'll come for you. Vanessa didn't hesitate. Now. Jason's heart pounded as he lunged at Baines, using every ounce of strength he had to break free from the ropes. He managed to knock Baines off balance, but the fight was far from over. In the chaos, the door burst open, and the sounds of shouting echoed through the room. Jason looked up, surprised to see a group of armed men storming in. This wasn't just a rescue. This was something far bigger. Can Jason escape? What does Vanessa's plan involve? Who's behind the rescue? The story is about to take another turn. Don't miss out. Subscribe and leave a comment to keep up with the twists ahead. Who do you think is behind Vanessa's mysterious backup? Let us know what you think in the comments. In moments of desperation, You learn who your true allies are. Sometimes, they are the ones you least expect. The room was a blur of chaos. Baines was on the ground, disoriented from the sudden attack, but Jason didn't have time to savor his small victory. The armed men pouring into the room were no ordinary henchmen. They moved with precision, a well-coordinated unit. Jason's breath caught in his throat as he realized they were here for him, but they weren't Baines's men. In the commotion, a voice cut through the noise. Jason! Vanessa's voice rang out, filled with urgency. Jason turned toward the door, his eyes widening as he saw her standing there, flanked by a group of armed individuals. She was calm, confident, her hand resting on the grip of a gun, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You came for me," Jason muttered, disbelief and relief flooding his chest. "Of course I did. You think I'd let Marcus and Baines win?" Vanessa shot back, her gaze briefly shifting to the unconscious form of Baines sprawled on the floor. "It's not just you they're after. They're after everything we've built, and we're not going to let them have it." Jason quickly assessed the situation. The men who had come with Vanessa were no strangers to combat. Their movements were smooth, and they worked in tandem, clearing the room with swift efficiency. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a carefully planned operation. He barely had time to process it when one of the armed men walked toward him, hands extended. "Let's get you out of here," the man said, his face unreadable. Vanessa nodded at Jason, signaling him to move. She kept her focus on the door, ensuring there were no surprises. "Do you trust them?" Jason asked quietly, his eyes scanning the room, looking for any sign of danger. "They're the ones who got us here," Vanessa replied, her voice unwavering. "And they're the only reason you're still alive." Jason's chest tightened at her words. The betrayal was still fresh in his mind, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it now. They were in the clear, for the moment. As the group made their way through the back corridors of the warehouse, Jason couldn't help but wonder. Who were these people who had shown up at the last minute? How did Vanessa know them? And more importantly, why had they chosen now to intervene? Outside, the night air hit Jason like a cold slap. He took a deep breath, letting the chill clear his foggy mind. Vanessa walked alongside him, her eyes scanning the perimeter as they moved toward a sleek black SUV parked near the back entrance. "We need to get you to safety. We're not out of the woods yet," Vanessa said, opening the door to the vehicle. Jason hesitated before climbing into the back seat. His instincts were telling him to keep his guard up, but he had no choice now. His life depended on these people, and he had to trust that Vanessa knew what she was doing. As the SUV pulled away, Jason's mind was a whirlwind of questions. He couldn't make sense of it all. The betrayal, the sudden appearance of these mysterious allies, and the fact that Baines was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Vanessa seemed to sense his unease. "You're wondering who these people are, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Jason nodded, his gaze fixed on the dark road ahead. "Yeah, I don't know what to think anymore. You said you had a plan, but this is bigger than I imagined." Vanessa's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, where the headlights of another vehicle could be seen faintly in the distance. "It's complicated," she said, "but the truth is, I've been working with them for a while. They're part of a larger network that's been monitoring Baines's operations. They've been keeping tabs on everything. I knew we couldn't take him down alone." Jason was silent, absorbing her words. It made sense in a way. There was no way they could have gone up against someone like Baines without backup, especially with Marcus's betrayal looming over them. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "And you trust them?" Jason asked, his voice low. Vanessa looked at him then, her expression unreadable. "I have to. Right now, they're our best shot." The tension in the car was palpable as they continued down the dark road, the miles stretching out in front of them. Vanessa kept her focus on the rearview mirror, her grip tight on the wheel. Jason was still trying to process everything when the silence was broken by the sound of a phone vibrating. Vanessa glanced at the screen, her brow furrowing as she answered the call. "This is Vanessa," she said, her voice clipped. Jason's eyes darted to her, trying to read her expression. Whoever was on the other end of the line seemed to be saying something important, judging by the way her face hardened. "Keep an eye on him," Vanessa said, her voice low and urgent. I don't care what it takes. We need him alive. Jason's stomach dropped. The conversation was brief, and when she hung up, she didn't look at him immediately. What's going on? Jason asked, his voice rising with unease. What did they say? Vanessa exhaled slowly, as if weighing her next words carefully. Baines isn't the only threat, she said quietly. There's someone else in play. Someone who's been working behind the scenes. And now they know about you. Jason felt a chill crawl down his spine. Who? Vanessa's gaze was hard now, her eyes sharp and calculating. Someone who has just as much to lose as we do. And they're not going to stop until they get what they want. As the SUV raced through the night, Jason could feel the stakes rising higher and higher. The calm before the storm was over, and now, the real battle was about to begin. Who was the real puppet master behind Baines? And what did they want with Jason? The story was about to take another dark turn, one that would test loyalties and force them all to confront the shadows of their past. The tension is building. Who is the true mastermind behind Baines's empire? What happens when everything Jason thought he knew is called into question? Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now and share your thoughts below. When the world is built on lies, the truth can shatter everything. The night seemed to stretch on forever, the SUV hurtling through the empty streets, leaving behind the wreckage of the warehouse and the chaos Jason had narrowly escaped. The air inside the vehicle was thick with uncertainty. Jason leaned back against the leather seat, his mind racing. His thoughts were a blur of betrayal, danger, and fear. And now Vanessa's cryptic words haunted him. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone even more dangerous than Baines. Jason didn't know what to think anymore. Every step he took led him deeper into a maze of deception. The people he had trusted, the alliances he had formed, were all part of something far more complex than he could have imagined. The safe world he thought he knew was now just a distant memory. Vanessa's voice cut through his thoughts. Jason, listen to me, she said, her tone firm but tinged with urgency. I need you to stay focused. We're not out of this yet. I don't care what happens. We need to stick together. Jason turned his head slowly to look at her. Her face was a mask of determination, but her eyes betrayed something else, a vulnerability he hadn't noticed before. You said someone else was in play, Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. Who are they? Why does Baines work for them? Vanessa's jaw clenched, and for a moment, she didn't answer. She stared ahead, as if contemplating whether to say more. The silence stretched on, thick with the weight of unspoken words. Finally, she spoke. They call themselves the Collective, she said, her voice low, the words heavy with meaning. A network of powerful individuals with interests in politics, tech, and security. They're the ones who set Baines up as their puppet. He's just a pawn in a much bigger game. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. The Collective. The name alone sent a wave of dread through him. He'd heard whispers about shadow organizations like this, powerful elites who controlled things from the shadows, manipulating events for their own gain. But he never thought he'd be caught in their web. And you've been fighting them this whole time? Jason asked, his disbelief evident. Vanessa nodded, her eyes now meeting his. I've been working against them for years. They've infiltrated every corner of society, every major institution. Baines? He's just the beginning. Jason's stomach twisted. If the Collective had their hands in everything, then there was nowhere left to run. They were everywhere. You didn't answer my question, Jason pressed. Why does Baines work for them? Vanessa took a deep breath. Baines isn't just some hired thug. He has his own motives. The Collective promised him power, everything he's ever wanted. And in return, he's been doing their dirty work. What we saw with Marcus was just the tip of the iceberg. Jason's mind was reeling. He thought he knew Baines, thought he understood what drove him. But this was different. Baines wasn't just corrupt. He was part of something far more sinister. Vanessa's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced at it quickly before swiping the screen. Stay on alert, she said, her voice hardening. We've got company. Jason sat up, his instincts kicking in. He looked out the windows of the SUV, scanning for any sign of danger. The city had grown eerily quiet, The only sounds the hum of the tires against the road and the distant rustle of wind. Then he saw it. A dark vehicle in the distance, its headlights cutting through the night. It was tailing them. Vanessa cursed under her breath and pressed the accelerator. The SUV speeding up, weaving through the streets. Jason's heart rate spiked. Whoever was after them wasn't going to stop. Not now, not ever. Who's following us? Jason asked, his voice tense. Vanessa's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I don't know, but I have a feeling it's someone connected to the collective. They won't stop until we're silenced. Jason's mind raced. He had to think. They couldn't outrun their enemies forever, and staying on the road wasn't an option. They needed a plan. Fast. Pull over, Jason said abruptly, his voice sharp. Take the next turn and stop. I've got an idea. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him, confusion flashing in her gaze. What? Are you insane? We can't stop. Just do it, Jason shouted, his voice full of urgency. Vanessa hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly and swerved onto the next street. She slammed on the brakes, bringing the SUV to a screeching halt in an alleyway. The dark vehicle following them slowed as well, but it didn't stop. It continued to move cautiously down the street, not sure where they had gone. Jason jumped out of the SUV without a second thought, adrenaline flooding his system. Stay here, he commanded Vanessa. Don't let them see you. Vanessa opened her mouth to protest, but closed it again when she saw the determined look in Jason's eyes. Be careful, she muttered, her voice thick with concern. Jason didn't answer. He had no time for words. He ducked into the shadows of the alley, moving quickly, keeping low. The pursuing car passed by without slowing, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. Jason exhaled, his body tense, every muscle ready for action. He had to find out who was behind this. If the collective was really as powerful as Vanessa said, they had to be stopped. He couldn't let them control everything, not if there was any chance of saving the future. Just as he thought they might be in the clear, he heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from behind. Jason's heart skipped a beat, and he spun around, instinctively reaching for his weapon. Standing there, just out of the shadows, was a figure in a dark coat, their face obscured by a hood. Jason tensed, ready to defend himself. The figure stepped forward, raising a hand. Relax, the voice said, low and smooth. I'm not here to fight. Jason squinted, trying to make out any distinguishing features. Who are you? Jason demanded, his voice cold. The figure pulled back their hood, revealing a face that Jason knew all too well. Do you remember me, Jason? The figure asked, their tone surprisingly calm. I'm here to help. Who is this mysterious figure? Can Jason trust them? Or is this just another trick in a web of lies? The truth is within reach, but danger lurks at every corner. Find out what happens next. Subscribe now and share your thoughts below. In a world built on secrets, the truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. Jason's mind reeled. He knew the face in front of him, but the name didn't come as easily as the memory. The person standing in front of him was not someone he ever expected to see again. They had vanished from his life years ago, and now here they were, as if they'd never left. Do you remember me, Jason? The figure repeated, their voice calm but edged with something darker, something Jason couldn't quite place. The face was familiar, but it had changed, hardened by time and experience. The once bright eyes were now clouded with something deeper, more unsettling. Jason's pulse quickened as his mind scrambled to recall the connection. Olivia, he said, the name slipping from his lips like a whisper. The woman before him nodded, a slight smirk playing at the corners of her lips. I didn't think you'd forget me that easily. Jason felt a chill run through him. Olivia had been part of his life a long time ago, someone he trusted, someone who had been close. But that was before everything fell apart, before the betrayal, before she disappeared without a trace. What the hell are you doing here? Jason demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion. Olivia's eyes flashed, and for a brief moment, Jason thought he saw something flicker in them, something familiar, something he couldn't quite understand. I could ask you the same thing, she said, her tone turning colder. But right now, I'm here to help you, Jason. whether you believe it or not. Jason stepped back, keeping his distance. Help me? You've got some nerve showing up after all this time, especially after everything that happened. Olivia's gaze hardened, and she stepped closer, her voice lowering. I didn't come here to fight with you, Jason. I came here because you're in over your head. You're playing with fire, and the people you're dealing with, the collective, they're not just some local thugs. They're far more dangerous than you think. Jason's fists clenched at his sides. I already know how dangerous they are. What do you think I've been doing all this time? I'm not some damn rookie. Olivia tilted her head, studying him carefully. Maybe not, but you're still making mistakes. The kind that will get you killed. Jason shot her a glare. If you're trying to warn me, I'm listening. But I'm not taking orders from you, Olivia. She didn't flinch at his anger. Instead, she stepped back, her eyes narrowing. I'm not asking you to take orders. I'm giving you a chance. You don't know everything. You don't know who you're really up against. Jason swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling in. He'd been playing this game, thinking he understood the rules, but something about Olivia's presence made him doubt everything. His instincts screamed at him to trust her, but the bitterness of the past made it hard. I don't have time for games, Jason said, forcing his voice to stay steady. You either tell me what the hell's going on or stay out of my way. Olivia sighed, the look in her eyes softening for a moment. I'm not here to make your life harder, Jason. I'm here to offer you a way out. Jason raised an eyebrow. A way out? From what? She glanced around, as if checking to see if anyone else was watching. Then she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. From the collective. They've been pulling your strings, Jason. Everything you've done, every move you've made, it's all been part of their plan. Jason's breath caught in his throat. What are you talking about? I thought Baines was the one controlling things. Olivia shook her head. Baines is just a tool. A puppet. The real power behind this whole thing is much more dangerous, much more elusive. And they've been using you to get what they want. Jason felt his stomach churn. He was starting to understand, but it didn't make any sense. Everything he had been fighting for, every decision he had made, had been based on the assumption that he was up against Baines and his cronies. But Olivia was saying it was bigger than that. Much bigger. So why now? Jason asked. Why are you showing up now, after all this time? Olivia's eyes darkened. Because you're in too deep, and because you've already made an enemy of the collective. You've exposed too much, Jason. They won't stop until you're either dead or completely under their control. Jason took a step back, absorbing her words. He had known things were bad, but this was worse than he could have ever imagined. The stakes had just been raised to a level he wasn't prepared for, and now he was trapped in a game with rules he didn't understand. Okay, so what do we do? Jason asked, his voice heavy with determination. Olivia's lips curled into a faint smile. We take the fight to them. Jason shook his head, disbelief written across his face. You're insane if you think we can take on the collective. These people, they're not invincible, Olivia interrupted, her voice firm, but they have weaknesses, and I know where to hit them. The only question is, are you willing to do whatever it takes to stop them? Jason's mind raced. This was it, the moment of truth. He had to make a decision, go all in or walk away. But there was no walking away. Not anymore. I'm in, Jason said, his voice steady. Let's bring them down. Olivia nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of relief and something darker. Good. Because we're going to need everything we've got. And you're going to need to trust me, no matter what. Jason met her gaze, uncertainty gnawing at him. But as much as he wanted to question her, as much as he wanted to walk away from this dangerous path, he knew he couldn't. The truth was out there, and he was going to find it, no matter the cost. As the night stretched on, the dark, oppressive weight of the world seemed to close in around them. Jason had no idea where this new alliance would take him, but he knew one thing for sure. The stakes had just gotten higher, and there was no turning back now. Jason has just aligned himself with an unexpected ally, but the real question is, can he trust her? Will they succeed in bringing down the collective, or will the shadowy organization find a way to crush them first? Keep watching. This is just the beginning. Don't forget to comment and share your thoughts. When everything you've built starts to crumble, what will you do? Will you fight to rebuild, or let the pieces fall? Jason's mind buzzed as he left the meeting with Olivia. He couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. Every step he took seemed to echo louder than the last, and the weight of the decision he had made felt heavier than ever. He had trusted Olivia once, but that was before the world had become this twisted, before the collective had grown into the monster it was today. Could he really trust her again? Was she still the same person he once knew? Or had she become just another pawn in a much larger game? The answer wasn't clear, but the stakes had just escalated beyond anything he had ever anticipated. As Jason walked through the streets, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He hesitated for a moment before pulling it out, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. His stomach churned as he answered. "Jason, I hope I'm not disturbing you," came the voice on the other end, calm yet tinged with an undertone of urgency. Jason's heart skipped a beat. "Olivia?" "Actually," the voice responded, "it's someone else. I'm afraid you don't know me, but I've been following your progress." Jason's grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" "Let's just say I'm a friend of Olivia's," the voice replied, before adding cryptically, "and I've been watching you, Jason. You're in too deep, and things are about to get much worse for you. The collective knows everything. They've been watching you all along." Jason's mind raced, but he managed to keep his voice steady. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything," the voice said with a soft chuckle. "But if you want to survive this, you need to listen carefully. They're coming for you, Jason. The people you've been trying to outsmart are smarter than you think. They know every move you've made, every phone call you've taken, and every conversation you've had. They're waiting for you to slip up. And when you do, they'll be ready." Jason felt his pulse quicken, the world around him blurring as panic crept in. "How do you know all this?" "I'm on the inside, Jason. I've been watching you. And trust me, you don't want to face the collective head-on. They don't lose. They never lose." Jason stood frozen on the street, the weight of the words sinking in like a stone. His every instinct screamed at him to hang up, to disconnect, to ignore this warning. But something in the voice, something in the urgency of the message, made him hesitate. "Then what should I do?" Jason asked, his voice hoarse. "There's a meeting tonight. A small window of opportunity for you to make contact. You can't take them down alone, Jason, but you might be able to get close enough to learn something crucial, something that could change the entire game." Jason's heart pounded in his chest. "What's the catch?" The voice chuckled again, this time darker. "The catch is that you'll have to take a risk, and you'll need someone you trust. Can you trust Olivia?" Jason's mind raced, flashes of doubt and suspicion clouding his thoughts. I don't know." "Then you'd better figure it out quickly, because if you don't, you won't have much time left." The line went dead before Jason could respond. He stood there for a moment, phone still in hand, trying to process the call. The voice had been right. Everything he had done so far had been part of a larger plan, and the collective was already one step ahead of him. He needed answers, but more than that, he needed to act. He couldn't afford to make another mistake. Jason looked around, taking in the empty street around him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about control. If the collective was watching his every move, he needed to take a step back and play the game differently. He couldn't let them dictate the terms. Without wasting another second, Jason dialed Olivia's number. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice calm but guarded. "Jason?" "Olivia, I need to know everything. What are we really dealing with here? Who's running the show?" There was a long pause on the other end. When she spoke, her voice was low and tense. "Jason, I told you there's more at play than you understand. If you think the collective is just some group of powerful people, you're wrong. They're a web. Every string pulls in different directions. And the higher up you go, the more dangerous it gets." Jason's frustration boiled over. "I need specifics, Olivia. I'm not asking for vague warnings. I need answers now." She sighed heavily. "I can't give you everything, Jason. Not yet. But what I can tell you is this. They know what you're up to, and they're going to make you pay for it. You've already crossed a line. There's no going back now." Jason's pulse raced as the implications of her words sank in. He had made his choice, and now he was facing the consequences. There was no easy way out. We need to meet, Jason said, his voice firm. Tonight. I'll send you the location, Olivia replied. But be careful. The walls have ears. They're everywhere. The call ended abruptly, leaving Jason with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. If he wanted to survive this, he had to take the fight directly to the collective. He had to expose them, take away their power before they could destroy him. And time was running out. Jason's journey is becoming increasingly dangerous. Every choice he makes now could mean the difference between life and death. Will Olivia's warning be enough to save him, or will the collective close in before he can strike back? Stay tuned. Things are about to get even darker. Don't forget to comment your thoughts below and subscribe to see what happens next. In the face of overwhelming odds, how far would you go to fight for what you believe? Would you risk everything to expose the truth, even if it meant losing yourself? The night was thick with tension as Jason stood in front of the building Olivia had directed him to. A nondescript office building tucked between two older, run-down storefronts. The faint hum of the city streets around him seemed distant, as if the world was holding its breath. Every instinct in him screamed to turn around, to walk away and forget the dangers that lay ahead. But he couldn't. Not now. Not when he was this close. He checked his watch, 10:05 p.m. He was late. He had been pacing the sidewalk for the last 5 minutes, wondering if this was some sort of trap. Olivia's warning echoed in his mind. The walls have ears. He had to move quickly. His phone buzzed in his pocket, making him jump. A single message from Olivia flashed across the screen. It's time. Meet me on the 4th floor, room 412. Jason didn't hesitate. He pushed through the door of the building, which creaked as it swung open. The low hum of fluorescent lights flickered above as he stepped into the dimly lit lobby. A lone security guard sat behind a desk, eyes half closed, seemingly lost in his own world. Jason had no time to waste. He kept his head down, walking past the guard, who barely glanced up. It was a risk, but a calculated one. He took the elevator to the 4th floor, and when the doors opened, he stepped into a narrow hallway, illuminated only by a few weak light fixtures. Room 412 was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. Every step felt like it was taking him closer to the edge of something he couldn't undo. He reached for the door handle, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then pushed it open. Inside, the room was small and sterile. Just a table, a few chairs, and a couple of filing cabinets. Olivia sat at the table, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. She looked up as Jason entered, her expression unreadable. "You're late," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason shrugged, walking over to the chair across from her. "Better late than never, right?" Olivia didn't smile. She simply motioned for him to sit. "You've been digging around, Jason. I hope you're ready for what you're about to uncover." Jason's brow furrowed. "You said there was more at play. What exactly are we dealing with here, Olivia?" She paused for a moment, looking as though she were weighing her words carefully. "The collective isn't just some group of power-hungry elites, Jason. They're a global network, embedded into every facet of society. They control everything. Businesses, politics, even the media. But their real power lies in something far more dangerous." Jason leaned forward, a chill running down his spine. "What do you mean?" Olivia's eyes locked onto his, her gaze intense. "They control information. They shape reality. And they've been doing it for decades." Jason's mind spun as he tried to process her words. "So everything we know, everything we see, it's all manipulated?" Olivia nodded. "Exactly. They decide what the public knows, what they believe, and what they don't. They control the narrative. And now, they're targeting you." The weight of her statement hit Jason like a ton of bricks. "Why? I'm just a small-time guy trying to expose the truth." "It's not just about exposing them, Jason," Olivia said, her voice growing more serious. "It's about disrupting everything they've built. They've been watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake. And if you don't stop now, they'll make sure you regret it." Jason's pulse quickened as the gravity of the situation settled in. He had crossed a line. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and there was no turning back. "But I'm not backing down," he said, his voice firm. I'm not going to let them control everything. I'll expose them if it's the last thing I do. Olivia's expression softened, though there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. You're brave, Jason, but you're also naive. The collective doesn't make mistakes, and they won't let someone like you stand in their way for long. Jason clenched his fists. Then I'll make sure they know I'm not backing down. There was a long silence between them as Olivia regarded him. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter. You're going to need help. You can't do this alone. Jason looked up, meeting her gaze. I don't trust anyone right now, you included. Olivia's lips curled into a wry smile. Fair enough. But you're going to need someone to help you navigate this. The collective has eyes everywhere, Jason. The only way to survive is to have allies. Jason hesitated, his mind racing. He had already put his trust in Olivia once, and it had nearly cost him everything. But if he was going to take down the collective, he needed more than just information. He needed a strategy. He needed a team. What do you propose? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Olivia pushed a folder toward him, its contents spilling out onto the table. These are the names of key players in the collective. People who are untouchable, people who control the flow of information, the ones who pull the strings from behind the scenes. If you want to expose them, you have to start here. Jason picked up the papers, his eyes scanning the list of names. His heart pounded as he realized the magnitude of what he was about to do. He was about to take on the most powerful people in the world, and the odds were stacked against him. You'll need to move carefully, Olivia warned. One wrong move, and it's over. Olivia's eyes locked onto his, her gaze intense. They control information. They shape reality. And they've been doing it for decades. Jason's mind spun as he tried to process her words. So everything we know, everything we see, it's all manipulated? Olivia nodded. Exactly. They decide what the public knows, what they believe, and what they don't. They control the narrative. And now, they're targeting you. The weight of her statement hit Jason like a ton of bricks. Why? I'm just a small-time guy trying to expose the truth. It's not just about exposing them, Jason, Olivia said, her voice growing more serious. It's about disrupting everything they've built. They've been watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake. And if you don't stop now, they'll make sure you regret it. Jason's pulse quickened as the gravity of the situation settled in. He had crossed a line. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and there was no turning back. But I'm not backing down, he said, his voice firm. I'm not going to let them control everything. I'll expose them if it's the last thing I do. Olivia's expression softened, though there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. You're brave, Jason, but you're also naive. The collective doesn't make mistakes, and they won't let someone like you stand in their way for long. Jason clenched his fists. Then I'll make sure they know I'm not backing down. There was a long silence between them as Olivia regarded him. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter. You're going to need help. You can't do this alone. Jason looked up, meeting her gaze. I don't trust anyone right now, you included. Olivia's lips curled into a wry smile. Fair enough. But you're going to need someone to help you navigate this. The collective has eyes everywhere, Jason. The only way to survive is to have allies. Jason hesitated, his mind racing. He had already put his trust in Olivia once, and it had nearly cost him everything. But if he was going to take down the collective, he needed more than just information. He needed a strategy. He needed a team. What do you propose? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Olivia pushed a folder toward him, its contents spilling out onto the table. These are the names of key players in the collective. People who are untouchable, people who control the flow of information, the ones who pull the strings from behind the scenes. If you want to expose them, you have to start here. Jason picked up the papers, his eyes scanning the list of names. His heart pounded as he realized the magnitude of what he was about to do. He was about to take on the most powerful people in the world, and the odds were stacked against him. You'll need to move carefully, Olivia warned. One wrong move, and it's over. He pulled out the folder Olivia had given him, studying the names she'd given him. The list was exhaustive. Key players from every corner of the world. People with power, influence, and resources beyond his comprehension. It was overwhelming. The more he read, the more he realized just how deep the collective's reach really was. Jason rubbed his temples, trying to focus. He needed a plan. But the information in front of him was like a tangled web. Each name was a potential lead, but they all seemed so far removed from each other. How could he possibly connect the dots? He picked up his phone and dialed Olivia's number, praying she would pick up. It rang twice before she answered. Jason? Olivia, I'm at a crossroads here. This list, it's too much. How am I supposed to figure out where to start? Where do I even begin to take down something this big? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Olivia spoke, her voice grave. Start with the ones who control the flow of information, Jason. The ones who pull the strings behind the scenes. They're the key. Once you take them down, everything else will follow. Jason's mind raced. Okay, but how do I get to them? They're untouchable. We're talking about billionaires, government officials, the media moguls. How do I even begin to break through their defenses? Olivia's voice was steady. You have to find their weak spots. They're not invincible, Jason. No one is. The key is in understanding their weaknesses, the things they've buried, the things they're hiding. That's how you get to them. Jason thought about it for a moment. Okay, but if they control the information, how do I even know what's real? What if everything I think I know is a lie? Olivia's voice softened. That's the hardest part. The truth is out there, Jason. You just have to look for it. But you have to be careful. The collective has eyes everywhere. If you make a single mistake, they'll come for you. Jason's throat tightened. He knew she was right. Every move he made now would be under a microscope. He could no longer afford to act impulsively. He had to be strategic, calculated. I'm not backing down, Jason said, his voice firm, but I need your help. If we're going to do this, I can't do it alone. Olivia hesitated, then spoke quietly. I'll help you, Jason, but you have to understand, this isn't just about exposing them. It's about survival. They'll stop at nothing to protect themselves, and they won't hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in their way. Jason's stomach churned at the thought, but he steeled himself. I understand, but I can't let them get away with this. The call ended, and Jason sat back in his chair, staring at the list of names in front of him. He had his starting point. Now, it was time to begin the hunt. The next morning, Jason was on the move. He didn't waste any time. He had a lead, a name on the list that stood out. Robert Knight, a media mogul with a stranglehold on the news cycle. His company controlled everything from television networks to online platforms. If anyone had the power to manipulate public perception, it was Knight. Jason spent hours researching Knight's background, trying to find any cracks in his carefully constructed empire. There were whispers of shady deals, of corrupt politicians on his payroll, of stories being buried and truths being twisted. But it was all circumstantial, nothing concrete. Yet Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Knight was the key. If he could expose Knight's connections to the collective, it might be the break he needed. As he dug deeper, the pieces started to fall into place. Knight had connections to a number of high-profile individuals, business leaders, lawmakers, even foreign officials. But there was one name that kept cropping up, a former government official named Elizabeth Carrington. Carrington had been out of the public eye for years, but Jason knew her name. She had been one of the most powerful figures in the country before she disappeared from the political scene. It didn't take long to find the connection between her and Knight. They had worked together on several projects, but the details were murky. Jason had a hunch that Carrington might know more about the collective than anyone else. But Carrington was no ordinary target. She was untouchable. Formerly a key player in the highest circles of power, her disappearance had been too clean, too convenient. Jason realized he had no choice. He had to find her. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together, but the danger is mounting. Jason is diving deeper into the heart of the collective's power, and there's no turning back now. Can he outsmart the people who control the truth? Or will he become their next target? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Things are getting even more intense. The past has a way of catching up to you, even when you think you've outrun it. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. Jason couldn't shake the sense that he was walking into a trap. He had been up all night, combing through files, trying to dig up something, anything that would give him a way to find Elizabeth Carrington. The more he researched, the more he realized just how deep she was involved in the world of the collective. Her disappearance hadn't been some quiet retirement. It had been orchestrated. His instincts told him that if he wanted to get answers, he had to find her. But the question was, where? Carrington had vanished from the public eye more than a decade ago after a series of scandals rocked her political career. But her name still lingered in the background, tied to everything from corporate powerhouses to dark money donations. Jason dug deeper into her past connections, hoping for a break. Then he found it. A name. A contact who might know where Carrington was hiding. Jason didn't waste time. He set off for the old industrial district on the edge of the city. It was a place most people avoided. A maze of abandoned warehouses, crumbling buildings, and forgotten alleyways. But for Jason, it was the perfect place to make contact without attracting attention. He had no illusions that the people he was about to meet would be friendly. But he was running out of options. The sun was setting as he made his way through the maze of streets, his heart beating faster with each step. The warehouse was tucked away in the back, a nondescript building that seemed to melt into the surrounding decay. He approached cautiously, the shadows growing longer as night began to fall. At the entrance, a man stood waiting, tall, with a hard expression that didn't invite conversation. He looked Jason up and down, sizing him up before speaking. "You're looking for Carrington," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. Jason nodded, trying to keep his composure. "I need to know where she is. I need answers." The man stared at him for a long moment before nodding toward the door. "You'll get them, but not here. Come with me." Jason followed the man into the building, which smelled of old metal and dust. The interior was dimly lit, the only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. The man led him to a back room, where another figure was waiting. This one was older, with sharp features and cold eyes that seemed to pierce right through Jason. "Sit," the man ordered, gesturing toward a chair. Jason hesitated but obeyed, his senses on high alert. The man who had brought him here closed the door, leaving the two of them alone in the small room. "Who are you?" Jason asked, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. The older man studied him for a moment before answering. "I'm someone who knows things. Things about Carrington, things about the collective. You've been digging, haven't you?" Jason didn't answer immediately. He had learned the hard way that not every question deserved an answer. Instead, he leaned forward. "I want to know where Carrington is. I need her location, and I need it now." The older man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "She's not easy to find. But I can tell you this, she's been in hiding for years. After her political career was destroyed, she disappeared. But not for the reasons you think. The collective wanted her gone. She knew too much." Jason felt his stomach drop. What did she know? The older man's gaze darkened. Everything. She was involved in a deal that would have given the collective control of the government. But she betrayed them, and they made sure she paid for it. Jason clenched his fists. "How do you know all this?" The man leaned back in his chair. "I was one of the people who worked with her, before everything fell apart. I was part of the deal, but I got out. I saw what they were capable of, and I knew that if I stayed, I'd be just another pawn in their game." Jason's mind was racing. Everything he had suspected about Carrington was true. She had been playing a dangerous game, one that had ultimately cost her everything. But if she had betrayed the collective, why was she still alive? The older man seemed to sense Jason's confusion. "She's still alive because they haven't found her yet. But they're looking. They won't stop until they do." Jason stood up, determination in his eyes. "Where is she now? How do I find her?" The man sighed, as if he had been expecting this question. "She's hiding in plain sight." Carrington knew that if she stayed off the grid, she'd be found. So she reinvented herself. She's no longer Elizabeth Carrington. Now, she's someone else entirely. Jason's frustration mounted. "Give me a name. Any lead." The older man hesitated before speaking. "She's living under the name Clara West. She's in a small town about 3 hours outside the city. But you need to understand, Jason, finding her is only part of the battle. The moment you step into her world, you'll be marked. The collective won't let you get close to her. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their secrets. Jason didn't hesitate. I'm not afraid of them. The man stared at him for a long time before nodding. Then go. But be careful. The deeper you dig, the more you risk losing yourself. Jason left the warehouse with the weight of the information heavy on his shoulders. The truth about Elizabeth Carrington and her new identity was the lead he needed, but it came with a price. The collective was closing in, and every move Jason made now would only draw them closer. As he drove to the small town where Clara West was hiding, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. Every turn, every stop, seemed like a potential trap. He had no way of knowing if the man who had given him the information was trustworthy, but for now, it was all he had. The sun was beginning to set again by the time Jason reached the town. It was small, quiet, almost too quiet. He pulled into a gas station and parked, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger. The streets were empty, the buildings run down, and the air thick with the scent of dust. Jason took a deep breath. He was getting closer. But he knew that this wasn't just a hunt for answers anymore. This was a fight for survival. Jason is on the hunt for Elizabeth Carrington, but every step closer to the truth puts him in greater danger. Can he find her before the collective does? And what secrets will she reveal? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Like, comment, and subscribe to keep up with the suspense. Things are about to get even more intense. Every secret has a price, and some secrets are more deadly than others. Jason drove deeper into the small town, his eyes darting between the old, crumbling buildings and the long, empty streets. This place felt like a forgotten corner of the world, a place where secrets had been buried and never spoken of. But he wasn't here to admire the scenery. He was here to find Clara West, the woman who had once been Elizabeth Carrington and who now held the key to everything. As Jason parked his car in front of a small diner on the edge of town, he felt the weight of the information that had brought him here. Clara West, if she was really here, was the last person who could confirm what he had suspected all along. The collective had infiltrated the highest levels of government, and if Carrington had been part of it, she might have been the one to bring it all down. But now, the question wasn't about what she knew. It was about whether she could still be trusted. If she had betrayed the collective once, could she still be the ally he needed? Or was she playing another game? One that would lead Jason into the heart of danger. Jason glanced at the diner's neon sign flickering in the dusk. It was quiet here, eerily quiet. The usual hum of life, the bustle of small-town evenings, was absent. Instead, the silence felt oppressive, like the calm before a storm. He stepped out of the car and approached the diner. The door creaked open as he entered, and the bell above it rang softly. The smell of stale coffee and fried food hit him immediately. A single waitress stood behind the counter, wiping down the surface, her movements slow and tired. Jason approached the counter, his boots clicking on the linoleum floor. He cleared his throat before speaking. "Excuse me, I'm looking for a woman named Clara West. She lives around here." The waitress didn't look up at first, her eyes focused on the cloth she was using to clean. But at the mention of Clara's name, she paused. Slowly, she looked up at Jason, her eyes narrowing. "You won't find her here," the waitress said, her voice low, almost as if she were afraid to speak the words aloud. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? I was told she lives in town." The waitress set down the cloth and leaned in closer, her voice barely a whisper. "She used to, but not anymore. You're not the first one to come looking for her, and you won't be the last." Jason's mind raced. The waitress seemed to know more than she was letting on, but he could tell she was reluctant to speak. "Where did she go?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though the urgency in his tone was unmistakable. The waitress hesitated, glancing around as if checking for anyone who might be listening. "I don't know for sure, but I heard she left town a few days ago. She was in a hurry, said she had business to take care of. Something important. I don't know where she went, but I heard her mention a place, a cabin out in the woods. It's isolated. No one goes there." Jason nodded, his mind already working through the possibilities. A cabin in the woods. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. And right now, it was the only lead he had. He turned to leave, But before he reached the door, the waitress called out to him. "Be careful," she warned, her voice low. "People who go looking for Clara don't always come back. There's something wrong about her. About that place. Just be careful." Jason stopped in his tracks, his hand on the door. He turned to face her, his expression hardening. "What do you mean? What's wrong with her? What's wrong with the place?" The waitress shook her head, her face pale. "I don't know for sure, but I've heard stories. People say there's something in those woods. Something that watches you. And Clara, she's not who she says she is." Jason didn't have time to push further. He had his lead. The rest would have to wait. He pulled the door open and stepped back into the cool evening air, his mind focused on the cabin in the woods. The road leading out of town was narrow and winding, the trees on either side growing thicker as Jason drove further away from civilization. The sun had set, and the darkness pressed in on him from all sides. His headlights illuminated the winding path ahead, but there was something unsettling about the woods surrounding him. The trees seemed to stretch out longer than they should, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. Jason gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to shake the feeling that he was being watched. The further he drove, the more isolated everything felt. The town was a distant memory now, just a blur in his rearview mirror. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he spotted a small clearing up ahead. There, at the edge of the forest, was the cabin. It was old, weathered, and looked as if it hadn't been touched in years. The windows were dark, and the structure seemed to sag under the weight of time. Yet something about it felt wrong, like it was hiding something Jason wasn't meant to see. He parked the car and stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached the cabin. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, but beneath it, there was something else, a strange, almost metallic tang that made Jason's skin crawl. He reached for the door, but before he could touch the handle, it swung open on its own. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light inside. It was Clara West, Elizabeth Carrington, but there was something different about her now, something unsettling. Jason took a step forward, his heart pounding. "Clara?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. "Come in," she said, her voice cold. "We have much to discuss." Jason has found Clara West, but the truth is more elusive than he expected. What has she been hiding, and why is she so elusive? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Secrets are about to be revealed. Some doors should never be opened, and some truths are better left buried. Jason hesitated for a moment before stepping inside the cabin, the dim light from the single bulb overhead casting long shadows on the weathered wooden walls. The air inside was thick with dust, and the faint smell of something metallic lingered. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he could make out a small table in the center of the room, cluttered with papers and old books. But his focus was on Clara, or rather, on the way she was standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. He took another cautious step forward, his pulse quickening. "Clara," he repeated, his voice strained. "I need answers. About everything. About the collective. About Carrington. And about you." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she closed the door behind him with a soft click that felt too final. Jason's instinct screamed at him, a quiet warning that something wasn't right. But he couldn't back down now, not when he was so close to the truth. "I'm not here to play games, Clara," Jason pressed, keeping his tone steady, though the tension in the room was suffocating. "I need to know what you've been hiding. The collective has its hands in everything, and you've been in the center of it all. What's your role? Why did you disappear?" Clara's lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile as she turned away, walking toward the table. She picked up a dusty old file and tossed it toward him. It landed on the floor with a thud. Jason stared at the file for a moment, feeling the weight of it in the air. Slowly, he crouched down and picked it up. As he opened it, his eyes scanned the contents, classified documents, some with names he recognized, others with information he'd only seen in passing. But one name stood out, Carrington. His breath caught in his throat. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. "Clara, why do you have all this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What is this about, Carrington? She turned to face him, her eyes dark and unreadable. It's more complicated than you think, Jason. You don't understand the full picture. Her voice was low, almost apologetic, as if she were speaking to someone who was about to learn a very painful truth. Jason's heart pounded. Then explain it to me. Please. I need to know. Clara took a deep breath before speaking again. Carrington wasn't just part of the collective, Jason. She was one of the founders. But she wasn't just a puppet. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she wasn't trying to destroy the world. She was trying to save it. Jason blinked, his mind struggling to process her words. What do you mean? How is that even possible? Clara stepped closer, her voice lowering even further, as though afraid of being overheard. The collective isn't just a shadow organization, Jason. It's a response to something much bigger, a system that controls everything. The political landscape, the economy, even technology. The people in charge, they don't care about us. They care about maintaining control. Carrington wanted to break that cycle, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. That's where I come in. Jason's mind raced. Every word she spoke seemed to turn everything he thought he knew on its head. So you're telling me that Carrington wanted to stop the collective? Wanted to take down the system? Clara nodded slowly. Yes, but it's not as simple as that. She couldn't go public with her intentions. If she had, they would have killed her, just like they did with others who tried to stand up. Instead, she started working from the inside, feeding them information, gaining their trust. She built her own network, Jason, and it's bigger than you can imagine. But it's fractured now, and I'm the only one left who can put it back together. Jason felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders like a heavy burden. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why all the secrecy? Clara's eyes flickered with something. Regret? Guilt? Because you weren't ready. You thought this was just about the collective, about stopping them. But it's bigger than that, Jason. This is about survival. About saving a world that's been corrupted from the inside out. And now, you're part of it. Jason stepped back, trying to absorb everything she had just told him. His mind was spinning. He had come to this cabin looking for answers, but what he had found was a tangled web of secrets, lies, and manipulation. And now Clara, the woman he had trusted, was telling him that the world as he knew it had been carefully controlled by powerful forces for generations. You're saying I'm part of this? He asked, his voice tight with disbelief. How? What can I possibly do? Clara's gaze softened, her eyes almost pleading. You have something they don't. You have the ability to see the truth, Jason. And now, you have the chance to do something about it. But only if you trust me. Only if you're willing to take the next step. Jason's heart raced. He could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. This was more than just a fight against the collective. It was a war for the future of the world. How do I know I can trust you? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Clara gave him a look that sent chills down his spine. Because, Jason, I've been where you are. And I've made the hard choices. You can't afford to doubt now. Not when everything we've worked for is on the line. Jason swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. What happens now? He asked. Clara didn't answer right away. Instead, she motioned toward the table, where several files lay scattered, the most prominent being one labeled Project Phoenix. Jason stared at the file for a long moment before picking it up, flipping it open. What he found inside was beyond anything he could have imagined. A plan. A blueprint for a new world. You're going to help me bring it all down, Jason, Clara said, her voice unwavering. And you're going to be the one who leads it. Jason didn't know what to say, but as he looked at the file, he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed forever. The truth has been revealed, but with it comes an even greater danger. What will Jason do with this knowledge? Can he trust Clara, or is he walking into a trap? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Everything is about to unravel. When faced with a choice between freedom and control, will you have the courage to choose the unknown? Jason stood frozen, the weight of Project Phoenix heavy in his hands. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in on him, the air thick with the tension of 100 unspoken truths. Clara watched him closely, her gaze unwavering, but there was something in her eyes. Something like hope, or perhaps desperation. For a moment, Jason considered the gravity of the situation. Everything he thought he knew had been shattered. Clara, the woman he had trusted, the woman who had been at the center of this dangerous game, was now asking him to lead it. But what was it exactly? A revolution? A conspiracy? Or something far darker? He looked back down at the file in his hands, at the intricate plans laid out before him. Blueprints for a new world, a world where the powerful few no longer controlled everything. It sounded noble, idealistic even. But was it possible? And if it was, what would it cost? Clara's voice broke through his thoughts. Jason, you have to understand, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone. The collective, Carrington, they've all been playing a game of smoke and mirrors, controlling the narrative. But the truth is far worse than we imagined. Jason's eyes met hers, trying to read her. What do you mean? Clara took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for the hardest part of all. The system they've built, this web of power, manipulation, surveillance, it's designed to keep us in check. The collective's true purpose isn't just to control information or political movements. It's to shape reality itself. They've been rewriting history, altering perceptions, molding the very fabric of society to fit their agenda. Jason's mind reeled as the implications began to sink in. So, the collective controls everything. What we see, what we believe, how we act. Yes, Clara replied. And they've done it for generations. But they're not the only ones playing the game. There are others, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to take control. Project Phoenix is our chance to stop it. To create a new system, a true system of freedom, where no one controls the narrative. Jason looked down at the papers once more, trying to piece together the fragmented picture she had painted. But there were still too many unknowns. Too many dangers lurking just beyond his reach. And what about Carrington? Jason asked, voice strained. Is she part of this? Was she trying to do what you're suggesting? Clara nodded, her expression grim. Carrington knew. She knew about the true scope of the collective's plans. She tried to stop it, to pull the strings from within, but she underestimated how deep the corruption ran. By the time she realized how far gone everything was, it was too late. They took her out. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. The weight of this information felt suffocating, and yet, a part of him couldn't look away. This was bigger than any single conspiracy. This was about the very foundation of the world he had known, and now, it was crumbling in front of him. You want me to lead this? To take down a system that's been in place for decades? Jason asked, the disbelief clear in his voice. I don't even know how to begin. Clara stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. You already know more than you think. You've seen the cracks. You've seen the manipulation, the lies. The collective doesn't care about you, Jason. They don't care about anyone. They've turned us all into pawns in their game. But you can be the one to break it. You can be the spark that ignites the change. Jason swallowed hard, feeling a storm brewing inside him. There was a part of him, deep down, that wanted to believe her, to believe that this revolution could work. But another part of him, the part that had seen the corruption, the violence, the destruction, was terrified. Terrified of what it would take to fight such a massive, all-encompassing system. Terrified of what it would cost him, and those he cared about. But Clara was right about one thing. He had seen the cracks. He had seen the shadows of truth that no one else seemed to notice. And if he turned away now, if he chose the comfortable lie over the painful truth, he would be just another part of the system they were trying to dismantle. This isn't just about us, is it? Jason asked quietly, finally understanding the full scope of what Clara was asking. This is about the whole world. Exactly, Clara replied, her voice resolute. It's about freedom. It's about truth. And it's about fighting for something that actually matters. Are you ready for that, Jason? Are you ready to be the one who leads this? Jason's thoughts raced, his heart pounding as the decision weighed heavily on him. The road ahead would be perilous. There would be no turning back. He would become a target. The forces that controlled everything would stop at nothing to destroy him and anyone who stood with him. But there was no more running, no more hiding from the truth. The choice had been made for him long ago, the moment he stepped into this fight. Jason closed the file with a snap, his resolve hardening. "I'm ready," he said, his voice filled with conviction. Clara's face softened, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. "Then let's begin. It's time to end this. The choice has been made. The revolution has begun. But will Jason's decision lead to salvation, or will it destroy everything he's fought for? The final chapter is coming. Don't miss it. In the end, it's not the battle we fight that defines us, but the courage to keep fighting even when it feels like all is lost." Jason stood at the edge of the rooftop, the city sprawling beneath him in a sea of lights. It felt surreal. The weight of the choice he had made, the promise of change he had given the world, all felt like an impossible dream. But there was no turning back now. The countdown had begun, and he had stepped into a role he never thought he'd play. Leader of the revolution, the one who would bring down the collective. He glanced over at Clara, who stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. She was more than just his ally now. She was his partner, his guide, and in many ways, the only person he could trust. They had spent weeks setting the plan into motion, gathering supporters, building alliances, and most importantly, preparing for the inevitable retaliation from the collective. It was only a matter of time before they came for him, before they tried to silence him and everyone standing with him. "Are you sure about this?" Clara asked, her voice cutting through the cold night air. She didn't need to ask what he meant. They both knew what was coming. Jason took a deep breath. "I don't think there's a way to be sure about something like this," he said, turning to meet her gaze. "But I can't ignore the truth anymore. We've built something here, Clara. Something real. And even if we fail, at least we tried." She nodded, her face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. "We're not failing, Jason. We can't. Not after everything we've risked." The sound of footsteps behind them interrupted the moment. A group of their closest allies, the ones who had joined them in the fight against the collective, had gathered at the rooftop. They were ready. It was time. Jason turned toward them. Their faces were set, resolute, but there was a flicker of fear in their eyes. Understandable, given the magnitude of the mission ahead. Every single one of them had been affected by the collective's grip on the world. They had their reasons for fighting, just as Jason did. "We've reached the point of no return," Jason said, his voice carrying to everyone gathered. "If we're going to end this, we do it tonight. We take the fight to their doorstep." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Clara stepped forward, her face hardening. "It's not just about taking down a corrupt system anymore. It's about giving the world a chance to rebuild. A chance to live without fear, without manipulation. This is for everyone who's ever been lied to." Jason looked out at the city again. The collective's influence was everywhere, hidden in plain sight, in every corner of the world, shaping lives, controlling minds. He had once been a part of that system, unknowingly complicit in its existence. But now, he had a chance to undo the damage. "We've got one shot," he said, his words cutting through the night. "Once we make our move, there's no going back. They'll come for us all. But we have the truth on our side. And that's something they can't destroy." As the team made their final preparations, Jason felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The collective had already begun tightening its grip, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Their agents were everywhere, watching, waiting for any sign of rebellion. But Jason and his team were prepared. They had infiltrated the highest levels of the collective's network, and tonight, they would strike. They moved swiftly through the streets, their faces hidden beneath masks, their bodies cloaked in shadows. Jason's heart raced, but he remained calm, focused. The plan was set in motion, each step carefully timed, each move calculated. They had one goal: take down the collective's headquarters and expose their darkest secrets to the world. The building loomed ahead, its sleek glass facade a symbol of the power and control that had held the world captive for so long. Jason could feel the weight of every step as they approached. This was it. This was the moment that would define them. As they breached the outer security, alarms blared, signaling that the collective had detected them. But it was too late. The team was already inside, moving with precision, dismantling the network that had kept the collective's lies hidden for so long. Jason's breath caught as they reached the central command room. Inside, the heart of the collective's operation pulsed with life. The monitors, the servers, the data, all of it was controlled from here. And with a few keystrokes, it could all be brought to its knees. But as Jason stepped forward, a voice stopped him in his tracks. "You really think you can win, Jason?" The voice came from the shadows, and Jason's blood ran cold. He turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness, someone he hadn't expected to see. It was Carrington. Her face was cold, hard. The woman he had once trusted now standing in opposition to everything they had fought for. The last piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Carrington had known all along. She had been playing both sides, manipulating the revolution for her own ends. "You're too late," she said, her voice laced with venom. "You think you can destroy everything? You think you're the hero here? You're nothing more than a pawn in a game that's much bigger than you." Jason's fists clenched, but he kept his composure. "This isn't your fight anymore, Carrington. It's over." But Carrington smiled, a cruel twist of her lips. "You think you can destroy the collective? You've only just begun to understand the true power it holds. You can't defeat it, Jason. You can't defeat me." With a swift motion, Carrington activated the failsafe, a last-ditch effort to erase everything Jason and his team had worked for. But before she could finish, Clara lunged, knocking the control from her hands. "Not this time," Clara said, her voice filled with a fierce determination that Jason had never seen before. "You don't get to decide who wins." The struggle was brief but intense. With the control now in their hands, Jason initiated the final sequence. The servers began to power down, the monitors flickering and dying as the collective's grip on the world began to loosen. Carrington's expression twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed as she was dragged away by their team. Jason watched her disappear, a sense of finality settling over him. The battle was won. The truth would be broadcasted to the world, the lies exposed, and the collective, along with everyone who had supported it, would crumble. The world wasn't free yet, but they had taken the first step. Jason looked around at his team, his heart swelling with pride. They had made it. They had changed the course of history. And for the first time in his life, Jason truly believed that anything was possible. The revolution is over, but the fight for truth and freedom is just beginning. Will Jason's victory lead to a new world, or is it only the start of another battle? Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the journey.